So, good evening, everyone. Today is November 24th. It's a regularly scheduled Brattleboro Select Board meeting. We are reconvening after a brief executive session where we have taken no action. So I'll just ask now, John, was the meeting properly warned?
Yes, Ian, it was.
Great, thank you. So first, I would like to look for a motion on the minutes.
I motion we accept the minutes.
Peter has made a motion to approve the minutes from November 7th of 2023. Board, is there any discussion?
Not me.
Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of November 7th, 2023, please indicate with an aye.
Aye.
That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item 3, which is chair remarks. So this evening, a kind of exciting change of pace for chair remarks. I'm going to cede my time to Seth, who's going to walk us through, give us a little bit of a live presentation of the new Brattleboro town website. And I asked him if he would be willing just to show us how you access the select board material for this evening and a couple of the other highlights for the new website itself. So we're going to do a shared screen on the Zoom. And hopefully people in the room have an opportunity to see it as well up here on the screen. And I'll just pause for a moment to give him.
Ooh, nice picture.
There we go.
All right. Hello, everybody. So if you go to our new website, brattleboro.gov, you can access the Select Board meeting material by going to the Select Board page itself, which is under Government and Select Board. There's also a quick link right here. And also, if you keep scrolling down the homepage, you can find meeting material in the news section and also in the new calendar. So we have an agenda view of the calendar here where you can see everything that's happening in town, including all of the meeting material right here, including agendas and other material that's relevant for it. If you haven't already, I would definitely check out the news section. We have a couple stories highlighted on the homepage, but if you click through the news section up here, where you can also go to the calendar. There's a lot of other things happening in town that you can view here. And I also just wanted to quickly mention too that the accessibility feature, if you've tried that out at all, that's down here in the lower left. It's also in the lower right and the mobile version of the phone. If you've been scrolling through this and you've been clicking on some features and you're trying this out and you aren't sure how to get it to go back the way it was, which I've done that a couple of times, if you just click on reset features, that'll bring it back to the standard view. So just wanted to throw that out there in case you were trying out the new accessibility feature. I also just wanted to mention too that we do have a feedback form. If you go to how do I and then click on website feedback, this will send me an email. This is a great opportunity just to let me know that a link is broken or that something on the website isn't working properly. I'm still in constant contact with the web developers, so sometimes running things by them will just solve an issue really quick. So please feel free to reach out to me. Now is the time to do that, and happy clicking.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I should have introduced Seth as our communications coordinator, and I am incredibly appreciative of all the work that he's put into getting the website up and running. It's been a long process, and I think that we've talked a lot about this at the board level, that the website is one of the ways that people interface with the town, and so it being clear, easy to access and utilize, and honestly beautiful and a good representation of our community is really important. So I'm very grateful for all the work that's gone into it, and I'm looking forward to us improving it as we get more information. And
I got it on
You're the
mute.
reason we can't
What
have
can I
nice
tell
things.
you?
You watching our meeting whilst you're in our meeting?
Yeah,
you're going to create a feedback loop.
it's supposed to be muted. What can I tell you?
That's not how it works.
So
Thanks for
website
your
works.
help with that.
yeah, and with that, I will finish my chair remarks and hand it over to the town manager.
Thanks, Ian. Good evening, everybody. I wanted to announce that petitions for town officers and town meeting members are available in the town clerk's office beginning next week, November 27th, with a deadline of January 29th. letters to return them back to the town clerk. Letters of intent for those town meeting members whose terms are expiring this year will be mailed out just after New Year's. But people could come in earlier if they want to pick up one at the town clerk's office. Those also have to be back at the same January 29th deadline. With it being a school vacation week this week, the Gibson-Aiken Center will be open for additional open gym and game hours from 1:30 to 5 p.m. on Wednesday and Friday. Additionally, the Nelson Withington Skating Facility will also be open for additional public skating from 12:30 to 2:30, also on Wednesday and Friday. Let's see, the planning director wanted me to mention that there will be a public forum on Wednesday, November 29th from 6 to 7 p.m. to discuss the Green and High Street intersection. That will be held here in the Select Board meeting room. We've engaged an engineering team to support this effort, and this forum will be an opportunity for people to review the preliminary concept for that intersection and offer comments or potential improvements, so please join us for that. And then finally, I wanted to remind everyone in the downtown of their obligation to shovel the sidewalks within 24 hours of the end of the storm. If you want to get on the email notification for sidewalk snow removal in the downtown, please email Patrick Moreland at pmoreland@brattleboro.gov or stop by the town manager's office.
Great. Thank you very much, John. Move on to agenda item 5, Select Board comments, committee reports. Board, any comments or committee reports? Franz?
Yes, I want to make the public aware of how often I am subject to ridicule by my fellow board members when I make announcements about my office hours. And I want to announce that office hours this week have been canceled because I won't be here. I'll be away. But starting next week, they'll be back, same as usual, Wednesday from 4:30 to 6:30, Friday from 8 to 10 in the morning, and I look forward to lots of people showing up specifically to talk about the budget. The budget is the core of what we do, and it's now all on the table. We'll be talking about it this evening, and I invite everyone to come and look and talk and help us, the board, and certainly me individually, decide what approaches to take to these important financial questions that we face.
Franz, tell us where we can find you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. At the Works on Main Street, with my big sign that says Franz on it. That's how you'll know it's me.
Great. Thank you, Franz. Other board members?
I can't follow that.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so in that case, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is the public participation. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on something that's not on the warned agenda, or to request that an item from the consent agenda be pulled and considered at the end of the regularly warned agenda. I just ask people keep their comments to 3 minutes, and I usually look to the room first, and then I will look to Zoom after. So if there's anyone who wishes to speak on the public participation, go ahead and raise your hand. And when you come up to the microphone, just make sure you speak there. It helps pick it up for BCTV and the people in Zoom land. And if you can just tell us your name and where you're from for the record, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yes, good evening, thank you. My name is Tim Kipp. I live on 30 Chase Street. I am here with other members of our committee. The name of our committee is Safe Communities. Our issue has been the drug house on Linden Street. And we've made considerable progress. We represent about 50 households in our community, according to the email list. And so first thing I want to say is we want to thank the town for what they have done in support of what our efforts to try, it's actually all of our efforts, not just us, the town's efforts to eradicate these drug houses, of which Norma Hardy said there's probably about 8 to 10 that are operating in our town. So I do want to be very clear that our committee feels that you deserve thanks for the support the police do, select board does, the town manager. So we want to start with that. So next item is we'd like for a little more assistance. We think we're close on getting rid of this drug house. We have some bureaucratic kinds of things I think we have to overcome, but I'm not going to go into those details now. But I have a request that perhaps, if we're thinking not just the circumstances that we're faced with on the Linden Street house, but rather the rest of our town, is there a way that we as a town, as a task force or whatever it may be, come up with a protocol, a model of how we address this ongoing problem of a drug house? And for a couple of reasons. One is it could maybe be more efficient, empower citizens more, and maybe scare off, if you will, people who look at Brattleboro or the state of Vermont and its laws as easy pickings for a place to do their illegal business. So I guess the request really is, can we as a town, as citizens and as leaders, come up with some kind of formula, some kind of model, some kind of protocol to deal with this issue? And that's it. And I don't know if anybody else has anybody from the committee. So
Great.
That's it.
Thank you very much, Tim. Really appreciate you coming and sharing that perspective with us. And I'd encourage you all to, I think there's two things. One, why don't we set up a meeting with the town manager's office and maybe a representative from the select board? I'd be happy to meet with you all and we can talk about that. And then also, I think we have continued discussions coming up on community safety, both from Jim Baker's work that he's doing, and then also our own work, which will start up after that work is done. So I think there are a number of places where we can engage on this issue in particular. And I actually appreciate how concise often these things feel really broad and difficult, but I think I see what you're asking for. And I think those two, let's start with a conversation with the town manager's office and move from there. I'm sure you will. Great. Thank you very much, Tim. I don't see any hands in Zoom, and I'll look to, I had a hand, yes.
Hello, Kate Traskus from Brattleboro and Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. And I just wanted to say a huge, huge, huge thank you to the fire department and DPW for the work that they did to make our dreams come true with the lights over Main Street in Brattleboro. They are on and shining tonight, so make sure that you drive through. This was a real collaborative effort and just so appreciative. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kate.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Kate, is there a date and time for tree lighting?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you for that. We are going to be doing the tree lighting in Plinny Park on Friday, December 1st during Gallery Walk at 6 p.m. So hope to see you there.
Excellent. Okay. I see a hand in the Zoom. It's like Aiden Smith. You want to just tell us your name and where you're from for the record?
Yeah, hi, this is Aiden Smith. I grew up in Brattleboro. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. right now. I'm just calling in because Vermont has two sitting senators, both of whom up to this point have not signed on to the ceasefire now resolution for Gaza, which is circulating in Congress. At a time when 13,000 people have been killed in Gaza, including 5,500 children, 3,500 women, 60 journalists have been killed, 201 medical staff have been killed, 30,000 have been injured, of which 75% are children and women. 25 hospitals and 52 health centers are out of service. And I could go on and on. So I'm calling on the Brattleboro Select Board, which is an elected legislative body of Brattleboro, to issue a resolution in support of a ceasefire. And this may feel maybe unimportant to some, maybe we feel powerless in this moment, but I would like to point out that a few cities around the country, Richmond, California, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, Atlanta, Georgia, City councils in Maine have come forward and done this action. I see it as, Brattleboro, Vermont. I'm very proud of being from Brattleboro. It's, I believe, one of the more progressive towns in Vermont. And I think, we have to do everything we can to exert political pressure on our elected officials. Perhaps Brattleboro starts it and other towns in the state follow suit. And we end up compelling our elected officials, as has been the case with Representative Balint, to call for a ceasefire so there can be a durable and just peace. I just want to also just let people know, winter is setting in Gaza. If a cholera outbreak were to occur, many more would die. Every moment matters. And I'll just finish by saying, I think it's our duty to formally call for ceasefire so that we might earn the right to ask for the forgiveness from the people from Gaza. And as long as we stay idle, we don't deserve that right. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Aiden. Yeah, just take a note there. All right, any other hands in the room? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the agenda item 7, which is the consent agenda. John, do you want to give us a brief rundown?
Sure. Thanks, Ian. There are 2 items on consent tonight. If the board approves the consent agenda, it will be approving an application for a 2024 Urban and Community Forestry Grant through the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program. This $45,675 dollars in funding would support development of a management plan for 159 trees at 8 locations, removal of hazardous trees at Living Memorial Park, planting of trees at the Common and on Main Street, and chainsaw training for town employees. The board would also be approving a parade permit for the Chamber of Commerce's Jingle Bell Jog to take place on Saturday, December 2nd.
Thank you very much, John. Board, anyone wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I take a motion. Daniel.
Ian, I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Daniel's made a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's going to carry 5-0. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 8, unfinished business A, entertainment, liquor, and open air ordinance changes. I will invite up to the table Hillary Francis, our town clerk. Board, as you will all recall, this is our second reading of the proposed changes to the ordinances. I will pass it over to Hillary. You gave a longer presentation last time, but I think we had a couple of questions, but I'm trying to recall if we actually sent you away with anything that we wanted additional information on or not. I don't think so.
I do not believe so.
Okay, so I think in that case, did you have anything else that you wanted to speak on it tonight, or just we'll open it up to the public for additional questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm basically here to answer any questions or.
I think, could you give us just a 2-minute, what sort of the general proposal is for the ordinance changes, just for members of the public who maybe weren't here at the last meeting, just so they kind of have a sense for what we're talking about?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So there are a number of different ordinance changes that we are recommending. One is related to Chapter 3, Article 2 regarding dog and wolf hybrid. And that is just as we were reviewing the ordinances, we realized that the ordinance was referencing the wrong ordinance. So we're recommending updating that. For background and proposed ordinance changes, general provisions, Chapter 11, Article 1, that has to do with general licenses and permits. The recommendations that we're proposing are bringing it more in line with the way that we as a town do our licensing and permitting. Not all of us have the same deadlines or the same way of doing it, so it makes it more in line with the way that we in general do it. Chapter 11, Articles 7 and 10, and Chapter 13, Article 7 has to do with entertainment and open air permits. And that will bring us more in line with the proposed pilot, or with the pilot program that you all approved for this year regarding entertainment licenses. We're recommending revoking Chapter 13, Article 7 altogether because that is conflicting with the other article as it relates, or with the other chapter as it relates to entertainment licenses. And then the rest of this, due to the changes with the liquor licensing that happened at the state, it makes it quite a bit more streamlined for businesses to apply for entertainment licenses if there are no changes to their entertainment license application. Then their licenses are automatically renewed. It waives the fee for them to get an entertainment license because it's such a minuscule fee that we collect. So there's very little impact to us, but it's a big impact to businesses, both in streamlining the process and in saving them that bit of money. And then the one-off entertainment licenses would sort of be rolled into the town manager's open air permit process.
Great. Thank you very much, Hillary.
Oh, sorry,
There's one more. Yes, there is.
Which
Chapter.
two more. Liquor licenses, Chapter 11, Article 8, updates the title of your local commissioners to liquor and tobacco commissioners. And then it also, just like we're trying to do anywhere in the ordinances, anywhere where people are referenced as he, she, it changes that to they, them, so we're gender inclusive. And it also adds if there are 2 or more violations by a liquor license or tobacco license holder, as you all requested, then when they're renewing their license, it comes before you all.
And we made that when we were, that request when we were running the pilot program on this.
You made that request, it was sort of around the same time, but it wasn't related to the pilot project. It was related to the liquor and tobacco license renewals, which had nothing to do with the entertainment pilot project.
Okay. Great. All right, board. I'll take a motion before we have additional discussion. Peter?
Okay. I'll motion to accept the ordinance changes to the Brattleboro Code of Ordinance, Chapter 3, Article 2, Dogs, Wolves, Hybrid, Chapter 11, Articles 1, General Provisions, Chapter 7, Entertainment, 8, Liquor, and 10, Parades and Open Air Meetings, and Chapter 13, Article 7, Entertainment, Clubs, and Restaurants, as presented.
Thank you very much, Peter. Board, additional questions or comments for Hillary? We had a discussion about this last meeting, so we had some questions then, but seeing none, I will open it up to the public if anyone has any questions or comments on the proposed ordinance changes. I don't see any hands in the room. I don't see any hands in Zoom. All right. Well, in that case, board, there's been a motion to accept the ordinance changes to the Brattleboro Code of Ordinances, Chapter 3, Article 2, Dogs and Wolf Hybrids, Chapter 11, Article 1, General Provisions, 7, Entertainment, 8, Liquor, and 10, Parades and Open Air Meetings, and finally, Chapter 13, Article 7, Entertainment, Clubs, and Restaurants, as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much, Hillary.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on to agenda item 9, new business A, which is the BDCC SeVEDS update. And I will invite Adam Grenold and I'm Jennifer. Thank you to our special presenter table. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so every year right around this time, BDCC and SeVEDS comes to the select board to kind of give us a presentation, and usually there is a financial, well, there always is a financial request. This is kind of the precursor to a discussion that you have at RTM where the budget is being approved and there's usually a special article for this item. So if you have a little bit of a presentation that you'd be willing to give the board, or maybe just to walk through the backup material that you provided for us, we greatly appreciate it.
Great. Again, thank you for having us here tonight. We do this to all communities in Wyndham County. So it's not just the town of Brattleboro, so we make our way around the county. And Brattleboro really helped kick this off many years ago when Brattleboro was the first sponsoring municipality, and said, wait, it shouldn't just be us. Go get some match. And the result of that has been an education for ourselves, for the communities that we work in really helping understand what SeVEDS is, what are SeVEDS-led initiatives, and why is it important, and how does that funding impact the community. So it has been a great process. We now get funding from about 85% of Wyndham County residents through the town meeting funding requests. And those are very flexible dollars, which we're able to leverage for grant matching and to bring additional capacity for the work that we do. So we've provided a background information in advance of this evening. Jennifer just handed out our annual report. And, we were chatting about this earlier today, and just thought we would leave really the opportunity for questions, for focus. If you have a topic you'd like us to dive in deeper on, we'd be happy to do that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I don't believe we actually have a motion for this evening. Is that correct? Or do we? I just want to double check.
Yeah,
Is there?
we do.
We do have a motion.
Okay, let's get a motion now, just to, for the allocation. Yeah, Liz.
I move to place an item on the warning for the 2024 representative town meeting to allocate $36,147 of program income to SeVEDS in FY25.
That's interesting. Has it always been worded that way?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it should be.
Yeah.
It hasn't always.
Okay.
I'd like to speak to it about it.
Yeah, as the person who made the motion, please.
Okay, so thank you for coming. I had the pleasure of attending your economic summit, and it was very interesting, this high school career education program. It looked really successful. I know some of the people who are involved, and they really have the right perspective of getting people into college as inexpensively as possible, and that's really great. And also, I really like the way that you've adjusted your presentation to us to talk about the specific impacts for Brattleboro. I've been hoping to have that. Here it is. Thank you very much. Also, when Randy Schumacher came, he talked a lot about a partnership that he has with you to improve the mover and make it more employment friendly. I wondered if you could talk about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I would love to. It's still a work in progress because we haven't totally figured out all the funding for this. So it's been a journey. And I will start by saying this grows out of refugee work because we do some direct service stuff and we do some system level stuff, and they connect up in various ways. So in working with the refugees, when refugees first started to arrive at the beginning of last year, which it feels like 5 years ago, but it was only 2 years ago. And we help people get into jobs, and we also were doing a lot of transportation solutions, quite literally running kind of a little transportation company, which was its own adventure. And that gave us like real firsthand experience of where the challenges come in for people trying to access jobs, particularly jobs that are reliable, that aren't seasonal, that are not, jobs where you're going to have your hours cut frequently or have your schedule change frequently. So that allows people to get to English classes or whatever. And you can see how those things would be great for anybody, not just refugees. And so we started talking with Randy about how we could find ways, who's the CEO of the Vermont, of the Southeastern Vermont Transit, which is the mover, how we could get to a place sometime in the future when we could augment the schedule, the bus schedule, to suit, in particular, people whose jobs end or begin later in the evening. So that's people who get off work, a lot of second shift jobs. Brattleboro has a large number of medical, manufacturing, as well as other service sector jobs that begin midday and ends late in the evening, which is considered second shift. And a large number of third shift jobs, which begin very late, 10 or 11, and go overnight. And again, often those are really great for families trying to juggle childcare, or make a little more money. Those shifts often pay a differential. So we did a study together. Randy kind of helped me see what some other regions were doing, and we did a survey so I could gather data about, some of the companies that have those shifts, how many jobs are affected, how many jobs are open at those companies, what are the wages there, so we would have a basis for planning something. And he came up with basically a design for what he calls a microtransit pilot. And he has been trying to obtain funding for that, and we also have been trying to obtain funding for that, and we look forward to talking more about that when we have this totally dialed in. But the goal will be to start in the new year. Microtransit would be kind of operated using a technology platform so that it's kind of on-demand rides. It's kind of like the way Medicaid rides people, get used, but it would be for people to go to services or jobs. And it's, again, not just for refugees. It would be for anyone who needs a ride between sort of 5:30 and 11. The exact hours won't be clear till we get the funding figured out. And it would be huge.
So from Dummerston right to here?
No, it's going to be in Brattleboro. It's going to be, and that's that's the pilot, right? That's kind of what we can put a number on, and we could also kind of quantify the service area in where most of the affordable housing is. Most of the refugees live, most of the service providers, and a large share of the region's jobs, particularly second and third shift jobs. So
that's great, because I've been asking the mover for that for some time, and there's a great need for that, and I appreciate your working with them on that.
It's such a privilege, and Randy's really terrific to work with, and I mean, as he will say very kindly, the way public transit is funded and all those things, it's hard to start a thing because then they're kind of committed to it in a way, right? So but we're going to get there. And I'm really excited. And I hope to not see people, as you probably feel too, walking up and down Putney Road in the icy snow at 9 o'clock at night with their groceries, so that's, hopefully it'll save some lives, probably,
I share
to
that.
be honest.
The mover is not only funded by the town of Brattleboro, but also by the state, because bus service is a public service.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and our goal is in one of the grants that we got a new workforce grant, which there was a front page article about it, so hopefully you saw that. And we had written into that some funding towards public transportation. So there's a lot of stuff to iron out about what can be used and can federal touch federal and all those things. But the goal was to bring some of the matching money to the table to try to make this easier to do. So.
Great.
Yeah.
And then the other comment that I have is about the $3 per person. It's been a history of sometimes $2, sometimes $3, and I'm wondering what the majority of the towns give. What's their rate of giving?
Yeah.
We ask every community for $3, and I'm going to say it's less than 3 communities who've ever adjusted it.
Yeah, I mean, there's one community that's, gone up, gone down, nothing, and there's, and then there are a couple of towns where they just come up with a number.
And it's
then
one
the
year to the next,
right.
and
Right.
it jumps around.
Yeah, and then the rest are, so I think it was 21 or 22 towns that funded us last year. I'm super guilty of getting that number wrong. That's not, I'm sorry about that. But I think it's 18 of the towns that fund us at $3.
Okay, and I'm just very sensitive to that because this, it affects Brattleboro the most because we're the largest town in the region, and a lot of nonprofits do that, and I'm always watchful to make sure that we're not disproportionately affected.
Yeah.
Which was that challenge originally.
Totally.
And so grateful for Brattleboro to really push that on us, because it forced us to learn how to communicate with the other communities. And what we so often hear, less and less, is, well, what have you done for our town? Mm-hmm. And rightfully so, right? Like it's municipal funds. Yeah. But the growing understanding of regional and the importance of, in most towns, 60+% of the folks are not necessarily working in the town that they reside in. And they often just share that base. So, yeah, regional is important. Being consistent across the county and asking for those same dollars is important. What each community decides, we're grateful for.
Great. And then my last comment is really what Ian brought up in the motion, that the money that we will be voting on is from program income, and it's not our direct residential tax money. And I think it's important to note that.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Other board members? I've got a couple unless. Franz.
I'll just say that this is an area that I feel undereducated about. I don't really understand what you guys do. I could not recite a list of your major successes.
Yeah.
So I think I need to learn more.
Great, can I come to your office hours? No kidding. It's okay. I know it's for residents, but I'm happy to.
I bet they're not only for residents.
Okay.
I think he entertains opinions from whoever
Yeah, please
passes
do
by.
come in and talk to me. Anyway, I'd like to learn more about what, and I see there's a lot of resources for learning about you folks, so there's really no excuse. You know, you in your letter to us, you referred to a source on the website, I think, of, or maybe it's in the subsequent material. But anyway, there's a lot to know, and I look forward to learning more.
Thank you. And there is it's really complicated, you know, and sometimes there's some things that we sort of have done consistently for decades, and there's a lot of stuff that, you know, changes and evolves, and some of that has to do with funding. Some of it has to do with, you know, we are trying to lay things down that aren't working or that aren't relevant now and move in other directions sometimes. So it's complicated, and we're not like a lot of other organizations. We're one of, you know, loosely a dozen similar organizations in the state, and we're not like any of them. So it's, you know, it's not obvious, it's not easy. We're a little bit of a unicorn-ish in Vermont. And, you know, yeah, and we love talking about it. And we can talk about it all night, but we don't have all night, so we won't.
Great. Thank you, Franz.
Thank you.
Other board members? So for me, first off, fully support you all. Thank you very much for coming and presenting and make yourself available for questions. Economic development is critical to Southern Vermont, and yeah, we should be supporting it at every level, including regional. I would make an assumption, but I'll just ask you. The approximately $36,000 that we are going to give you, potentially depending on RTM, do you use that? Do you leverage more money in grants and other funding sources for specifically Brattleboro businesses or community members or, you know, construction or things like that in the last FY23 year? Could you tell us that?
Yeah, I think, you know, the back of this report references just how much we do leverage dollars for. Specifically for the programs in Brattleboro, there's a list that was included here. We also the RDCs of Vermont, through funding from the state of Vermont, just launched a technical assistance program that was fully subscribed within 3 days of launch. It was $1.2 million, fully deployed. And this time it was really intentional to target historically underrepresented groups of business owners. And all of the slots have been taken by those priority groups, as well as in this region, 22 waiting, all from the priority sector, then the rest of the folks who didn't even get in as a priority. So there's a need for technical assistance, small business technical assistance. It's something that this region, the whole state needs. We're vastly under-resourced for technical assistance in bookkeeping, CPA work. And this is such an area for small business owners. Likely a passion brought them to their idea and their ownership, not a strong fundamental in bookkeeping and accounting. So this is an area where really we see a lot of folks struggle. And we have provided significant resources to help with that technical assistance. And I think this list, I think it was 50 businesses in Brattleboro specifically received help. Yes, 120 businesses, including 53 Brattleboro businesses.
And that doesn't include the most recent, or does it? Does it include the most recent technical assistance?
No,
No,
that's
that's
just
not,
launched.
this
That's
most
last
recent
year.
program is,
Yeah.
those numbers are not in here yet, because that's just happening,
Yep.
so.
So another
But most of those,
50.
the underrepresented businesses are mostly Brattleboro businesses, you know,
Yeah,
it's gonna be the
they
majority of
are.
where the dollars come in. A different way of kind of responding to that is, you know, we do ask towns for money. We don't do a lot of local fundraising. You know, we try really hard not to compete for dollars, you know, whether it's individual donors, whatever. There's some exceptions because our high school program, we ask employers and some other, you know, funders from the private sector to invest in that because it directly, you know, relates. And but in general, we're trying not to make life harder for other nonprofits because we have the ability and the capacity to reach outside the region for money. So we kind of had started tracking a few years ago how much money we bring into the region from outside, because that matters a lot to us, and that's kind of, it's not often for us, it's often, you know, helping somebody get their earmark, it's helping the, you know, Friends of Vernon Center, or helping, you know, someone else with their, the retreat farm, and we're either sometimes grant compliance help, or project management help, or financial help, but, so last year was, you know, 11-something million dollars that we helped bring to the region, and again, not all for our programs, just trying to help make sure it got here.
Great example is the town of Brattleboro water project in Exit 1. It's similar. We do that around the region.
Yeah. Great. My other question was, can we get a digital version of this so that we can put it on the website?
Yes, hopefully it was sent to you in the email, but if not, it's on the website and in a flipbook format. That's good for like iPads and stuff, but also as a PDF you can download.
So we'll make sure to incorporate that in
Yeah.
the material for this item and make sure it's accessible on our new website. So.
And I owe you a data report and I'm working on it.
Yeah, well, and I would say, you know, this is
It's not forgotten. It's
and
just-
this is kind of the first step, right? And then we'll hear from you again at RTM and maybe at the informational. So, other board members, questions before we open up to the public? Seeing none. So we'll hear from the public for a moment, see if there's any questions looking in the room. Seeing no hands. Looking in Zoom, no hands. In that case, board members, we have a motion pending to place an item on the warning for the 2024 representative town meeting to allocate $36,147 of program income to the SeVEDS in FY25. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's going to carry 5-0. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate the
everyone.
invitation.
For your time.
Yep. All right. With that, we're going to move on to new business agenda item 9B, which is the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance update.
Just realized this is 9C here on the
Oh, is there an
book.
error?
It says C.
Oh,
It's unlucky to have
welcome, Kate Traskis, to the Brattleboro Select Board meeting.
Why, thank you.
So, when I was reading over this information this weekend, I asked myself the question of, why are you coming to the meeting? And I asked Patrick to explain it to me as well. And so there was a Brattleboro Select Board of years past that passed an ordinance that requires the designated downtown agency, which is the DBA, to come before the Select Board to talk about the budget and talk about what you're up to. And so this is you fulfilling that duty under the ordinance. And we appreciate you coming. And so I will pass it over to you if you want to introduce yourself and give a little bit of a presentation.
Sure, thank you. I'm Kate Traskis. I'm the Executive Director of Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. We are the designated downtown organization for the town of Brattleboro. We are one of 24 across the state designated downtowns, and our program is built off of the National Main Street America model. So I gave you, just to, again, follow the procedure, because that did come up last year.
Did.
And just so everyone knows, the DBA board did vote unanimously to pass our budget on September 21st. The DBA membership at our annual meeting unanimously passed our budget on September 27th. And so this is the last step in the process to come to the select board prior to January.
Yeah.
And so the ask from us is the same as last year for the from the special assessment tax. And I think in the report, I would just highlight that I think this question comes up because I feel like we have earned your trust and you like the work that we do for the town. We really are the, can-do organization that is all about having Brattleboro thrive. And our focus is Main Street businesses, as well as arts and culture organizations, nonprofits. And so, again, following the Main Street model, we work in sort of 4 pillars. One is design, our Bloom program. Everybody knows the flowers downtown, and soon everyone will know the holiday lights in Brattleboro. We also have our promotions. So our biggest one is Gallery Walk that we do 8 times a year. But we also run other promotions and events like Love Crawl, Brattleboo, Plaid Friday campaign that's happening right now. We have our organization, so we're looking at cultivating and really supporting our membership, looking at diversifying our funding structure and really focusing more on fundraising in the next few years. And then the 4th pillar is economic vitality. And so we have been working with Maggie Foley as a consultant, and we are in our strategic planning process, coming to the final stages of that. And that area has really bubbled up as an area that we want to have more intentional focus on. I think that, I think a lot of things. But one thing is, as you look at Main Street, right, everyone was really, had a very strong reaction, very emotional reaction to Sam's announcing their departure from Main Street. And I think, one, that we should celebrate the Borowski family for how long they held that business in downtown as an anchor store. Everyone is allowed to earn a retirement, and so we want to thank them for that. But it's more about how does the DBA engage with businesses and with planning and with partners on how we address those gaps and anticipate those gaps. And so when I look at Main Street, I can see that we have several businesses that have been there for decades. And so it's not a given that they will stay. They also can earn a retirement. And so we need to be more proactive in thinking about how we are attracting new business, how we are incentivizing business and investment in downtown, how we are cultivating entrepreneurs. And so that's an area that we really want to be stepping into.
Great. Am I correct that you're done with your presentation?
Well, yeah, I'll just pause because I think I might get some questions.
Okay.
See what's. I could keep
Daniel. I should take a motion.
I'll give you a motion,
and
then I'll
you can
speak to it.
speak to the motion.
Thank you so much. Whatever the motion is. Let's see. I move to place an item on the warning for the 2024 Representative Town Meeting to authorize the collection of an assessment on properties in the downtown district in the total amount of $80,000. Wonderful. So you were saying you wanted to kind of step into local economic development work and strategy work, right?
Yes.
Is that what I heard? And,
yes.
We just heard from SeVEDS and BDCC, which is a regional economic development and strategy kind of work. And so I'm assuming there is a partnership there. I'm also assuming that, it's actually interesting, because I think in the past I've thought about the work of BDCC and thought about its impact in Brattleboro, and sometimes struggled with the kind of regional nature of some of the work that BDCC and SeVEDS is up to. And in this moment where we have, a a store on each corner of one side of Main Street, not a store, a space on each corner of Main Street that's empty and large. And we have a moment in town where people have mixed feelings about downtown. I think it is important that somebody steps in with a strategy and some energy, and that the Brattleboro Selectboard is very rarely involved in that kind of work. You know, I don't have any say in what business goes into a place other than is it appropriate for the zoning, right? And so I would look to the DBA and BDCC and SeVEDS to partner on that work. And if you have any proposal, I'd love to hear it.
Great. I have a few ideas. So I think, you know, economic development, as we all heard, is important at all levels. So the work that BDCC is doing for the region is absolutely essential. And in thinking about large manufacturing and industry and jobs, workforce development, all of that is critical and impacts Brattleboro. On a more local level, I think that the Chamber and DBA can be working collaboratively with the BDCC and with the town to figure out what the strategy is for us here in Brattleboro specifically. We have two things that the DBA is going to be doing this year are a business and building inventory of downtown. And so that means we'll be going parcel by parcel to understand what the assets are. So not only first floor businesses, but also what's happening in second and third floor office space or residential. Where are the opportunities for potentially redevelopment or reconfiguring what that looks like? What is the square footage? All of those pieces. We also are going to be doing a business and consumer survey. And so we have a real opportunity, depending on how far we cast that survey, to better understand what folks' patterns are in shopping and what they want to see downtown, expect to see downtown, where they go elsewhere. And so those are two pieces that we are doing and are actually required to do through the new Downtown Vibrancy Fund from the state. So that data is what's also really got me thinking about how do we create a more data-informed approach. And so I'll go back to the Sam's example again. Greg at the Chamber and I met with Brad Borofsky 9-10 months ago, just to sort of say, hey, what's going on? You know, your lease. Ooh. And so he let us know that he was planning on selling the 3 locations, and that he was working on it and those kinds of things. And at the time, I mean, Greg or I really wouldn't have had anything to offer. And so having a building inventory, having a consumer survey, and then also there are some pieces of data that we should be getting or should have access to, but we just haven't yet in the past. So one is location analytics software, and this is using mobile cell data to better understand who's coming to our town, from where. You can really drill down in these software to find out, you know, about income levels and all kinds of things. You can pin a specific location on Main Street and figure out everybody who walks by Sam's, where else are they shopping in the outdoor sector, right? So there's a tool that I think would really be super valuable for us as we're thinking about marketing and reaching out to attract new business, and then also adding on the layer of demographic data that we have. So population, age, education, income level, not just for Brattleboro, but in our drive market. So if we were able to package all of that then it feels like we actually have something we can use to go out and really market Brattleboro and the opportunity that it is. I think that, again, as I was saying, there are several businesses that I think in the next 3 to 5 years will see turnover, and that is a lifespan turnover. Again, it's retirement. And I think that if we aren't proactive in getting out to attract new business and telling this story of opportunity and investment, then my fear is folks will attach businesses leaving to a negative narrative that is so dominant that we hear about Brattleboro, when in fact, I don't think those things are actually related.
Great. Liz.
Welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention, to respond to Ian's question, the Select Board has a fiduciary responsibility to review this downtown organization, especially because they have the power of a special assessment tax, and that is really where our responsibility comes from. It's not being nosy, it's being responsible. And I wanted to thank Kate. I think, the work that her marketing work that I've participated in the town of Brattleboro is really stellar. Gallery Walk is a raging success, as Love Crawl and so many other things. And it really does speak to the life of our town, and it's particularly downtown. And I'm all in favor of advancing those goals that you just discussed. And I think that it's very necessary at this particular time in the life of our downtown. And I know many of those shopkeepers are thinking of retiring, but of course there are new shopkeepers, some of them even at this table. So I applaud them all.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. Daniel.
Yeah, sorry to jump back in so quickly. As soon as, the motion's really about authorizing the collection of assessment, and I guess we're looking at this budget that you guys have just adopted, is what you're describing, that kind of strategic approach to local economic development work, is that in this budget?
No.
Okay.
So our budget process and our strategic planning process did not align perfectly. So our budget was approved, these goals and this work has been sort of ongoing. And so now, if there is an opportunity for funds to support this work, I too feel a very real sense of urgency that now is the time. Probably 2 years ago was the time, but it's, to really think intentionally about this. So the software that I mentioned, anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. The building and business inventory, I'm looking at quotes for that. But even if we do a software option for that and pull Esri data and all kinds of things, it's still going to need to be truth checked, someone going building to building. And then, so I think having a person, contracting someone who has a real economic development background. This is not my area of expertise. I know enough just to ask questions. But I think that would be really critical. I also think that there are, and I've heard from the state, ACCD, who runs the downtown program. I was at the downtown retreat earlier this year, and we were talking about economic development. And there are several towns who have either an economic development person at the municipality, or that person would work for the downtown organization. And so the comment was made that, I can't believe Brattleboro, for your size, I can't believe you don't have someone. And historically, Brattleboro hasn't gone after as much money as many of these other towns. So, there are funds out there, but because we don't have someone looking at those grants or taking our plans that we have and then working on where's that implementation or action to put it into use.
Okay. Interesting. So there's maybe an additional ask coming here beyond the special assessment, but not quite sure what that final number would be, is what I'm hearing, or am I not accurate?
Right. I mean, I think that I could throw out a number, or I could take maybe another.
Well, oh, go ahead. I didn't
No,
mean to
go ahead.
I was going to say, one thought I have is the way that we are doing the budget this year, which we will hear at length about a little later in this meeting, is a lot of sort of menu options for a lot of different things that could be included in the budget. If there are 3 head nods from the select board interest in this as something, as a request, I could see it being maybe something that you work with the town manager's office in essentially developing a menu option for the board to consider as part of the budget discussion for this year. Obviously, we wouldn't have that information for tonight, but tonight is really the opening discussion, and we have a lot to consider over the next couple months. So that might give you a little bit of an opportunity to help, give us a sense for what the ask is. And it's not really saying that we would approve it, but it would give us an opportunity to consider it with the rest of the budget. And that's going to make a lot more sense after we go through the budget discussion. But if that, Daniel?
Yeah, do you want to finish your thought?
No, that's it.
I mean, I would be interested in hearing more about this. I think we need some firmer details. I would also want to say that if we're talking about the general fund budget, this is an assessment on downtown properties, this motion, and I guess other money that is being used by DBA and the chamber is coming out of the 1% rooms and meals tax, which is it's a source of revenue in the general fund budget, and I would just kind of want to say that whatever funding, was considered for this, I would want it to have the least impact on our taxpayers.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I'd be open to hearing more, but I want to be flexible about the funding.
I'm going to comment on Daniel's comment. And in the same way that SeVEDS uses program income, which is not taxpayer dollars, I think that money can be used for economic development. And I'm sure that if it's good for regional economic development, it should also work for local regional economic development. And so I would ask town staff to look into utilizing those funds for this purpose.
So I think what I'm hearing, and from my own perspective, I hear the urgency, and let's see whether it makes sense for it to be kind of incorporated into the budget FY25 budget discussion, or if it's coming from a different income source. And so instead, it's just something else that comes before the select board soon. That's not part of the budget discussion. I think it will help for you to talk with John a little bit more about it to sort of see exactly where it makes sense to land. But I think it makes a lot of sense to have it before the board again to talk about, because I think everything that you've spoken to, it's absolutely true, and the board should be supporting the downtown, especially given the transitional period that it's in. So does that work for you? That thumbs up on Liz and Daniel? And Peter, that's plenty of head nods for me. So kind of getting back, board, any other questions on the presentation or the budget? You guys have spoken a lot.
Yeah.
I just,
Peter?
I didn't have a chance to speak to the folks from the BDCC, but I'll just lump you all in for all the work that you do, kind of supporting Brattleboro and the community. And, I see Kate as this kind of local heartbeat, and the BDCC kind of just really kind of lending some backbone and making sure everything is standing up and moving forward. So, I mean, I appreciate firsthand the work, both organizations do in the town of Brattleboro. So, you know me, whatever I can do to support, I'm there to help support.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Peter. And I'll just clarify, John, was that clear enough?
Yeah.
Okay. From on that.
My understanding is that Kate will work with the town manager's office to develop a possible funding strategy to come back to the select board with, either in the FY25 budget process or otherwise.
Yeah.
Does that sound
Sounds
Yeah.
exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Much more succinct than me. Well done. Ron, did you?
Well, I just wonder if Kate wants to say anything about the role of T-shirts in Brattleboro's future. So,
What?
Something will be coming forward
thank you.
soon. You're welcome.
Oh, boy.
It's an inside joke, unfortunately, I'm privy to it.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
What does it say? Franz's office hours?
yeah, that's exactly what it is.
There's nothing,
You could sponsor them.
you people are so
Not T-shirt
fixated.
weather, though.
Yeah, and Kate, I want to echo, we'll hear from the public next, but I just do want to echo Peter on how much we appreciate the work that you do. And yeah, I mean, it is like amazing to walk home from work through like the gallery walk, right, on a Friday night. Like, it's just, yeah, really, the things that you do really bring the community together, and that work is essential. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Aaron Skaggs.
Yes,
And our board of directors.
Absolutely, yes, 100%.
And volunteers.
And volunteers, and yeah. So hear from members of the public. If I don't see any hands in the room currently, I do.
Yes, Adam Grinold, I just want to make sure that we don't leave here with any question. We fully support the work of the downtown. We've been in close conversations about all that you heard tonight, so eager to be a part of that.
And Adam, if I can interrogate you for a moment
Sure.
on it, if you could be a part of that discussion with the town manager's office on the funding, if that's helpful.
Whatever Kate wants, we'd happy to participate.
Yeah, okay, because I'd really love to support it in the best way we can, and so if we can have some clarity on it, it'd be really helpful. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, and I don't see any other hands in Zoom, so in that case, board, there is a motion to place an item on the warning for the 2024 representative town meeting to authorize the collection of an assessment on properties in the downtown district in the total amount of $80,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you again. Thank you very much, Kate.
Thank you so much.
Cool. All right, we're gonna move on to new business agenda item 9C, which is the fire department monthly update. Welcome, gentlemen. It has been a moment.
Good evening.
Evening. Chief Howard, AC Kier, are here to give their monthly update. This was a request of the select board after the decision in September on EMS to hear both just sort of incorporating in the updates we were hearing before, plus an update on how the EMS transition is going. So with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. As far as the update on the transition, currently we have one ambulance that we have received. The radios have been put in and it's been lettered. The equipment's going on it. Yesterday, we started the license process through the state of Vermont of getting our transport license. And part of that process is we have to post a notice in the paper, public notification, and then folks have 14 days to appeal to the state of Vermont EMS office. That'll be in the paper at the end of this week.
Okay.
So we started that process. As it says in the monthly report, when I wrote the report, we had interviewed 3 candidates so far for our EMS superintendent. We interviewed another 2. We've made a conditional offer to a gentleman and he's accepted. So we're just working on background check and other things. And the goal is just to have that individual on the team by January. Very
Excellent.
excited about that and look forward to making that announcement when I can, but we hit a home run, I think, there. With that, I'll turn over the stats to Assistant Chief Keir.
Current billing from Golden Cross for fiscal year 23-24. We've billed $338,648.80. Sorry, not we, Golden Cross. The revenue collected was $308,559.11. For the side-by-side data, I'll just go through the FY24 data. Total EMS calls, 1,111. Average time to scene was 4 minutes and 28 seconds. The 90th percentile at the scene for emergent response is 7 minutes even. The max time to scene, 29 minutes and 16 seconds. That was waiting for PD to secure. Average dispatch to clear is 25 minutes and 36 seconds. Transported 700 patients. Non-transported 411. The need for 2 ambulances jointly was 201 times. The need for 3 ambulances jointly was 21 times. The need for mutual aid once. The need for mutual aid to cover the town of Brattleboro 4 times. And the total call volume for October was 277 calls. Yeah, that concludes the data.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chief Howard and AC Kier. Board members, questions, comments? Liz?
Good evening, gentlemen. I think I read in the paper that Medicaid is planning on allowing charges for non-transport ambulance costs.
There's
Have you heard that?
currently a bill in the House in Washington to do so, and we're watching that. A lot of that, what we're learning from that is they're hopeful that this will alleviate bombarding the emergency room with unnecessary, I don't want to say unnecessary calls, but people that really don't need the emergency room, they just need to be medically evaluated and probably most likely can stay home. So that's kind of where this is going, and we're watching it, and from what we hear, we're hearing positive that it'll pass. But
And have you contacted our Congresswoman and told her that you're in support of that?
the town manager has, yeah.
Yeah, we've been in contact with all, both senators and Congresswoman, and they're hopeful that this moves forward. It was a bill that they all sponsored, and if it passes, our revenue numbers will be much better than we even projected back in September.
And you can provide, or you're planning on providing all the services identified in that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. Other board members? Franz?
So on that topic, who'd pay that? You'd bill somebody for a non-transport, but who would you bill and who'd be available to pay it?
It's Medicare, Medicaid.
Medicaid.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that would be specifically both Medicare and Medicaid.
Right.
Okay.
Other board members?
If
Peter?
yeah, I mean, if I've read through it, what Liz had mentioned, I mean, that would be a huge win for the decision that we made. I mean, as far as billing, and I know that was some concerns, transports not versus non-transport, so I think it's really important to put a fine point on that. This would really be a positive upswing, financially speaking.
Thank you, Peter. Other board members?
Well, it's just
Liz?
not just financially, but we're providing medical help to people in need.
Well, of course, but we were going to do that anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Franz? Whatever your name is.
So we're going to have this ambulance service in the fire department. And there's a lot of preparations underway for that. And I imagine they're going well. And what I'm wondering is, are there any areas that you're encountering obstacles in, or, just finding that things aren't working out the way you had anticipated, or anything else that we should know about that, maybe is, not everything's perfect in life, so what would you say to that?
I think our biggest obstacle right now is not that we've currently hired one of the 6 new people that we are going to hire. Next week we have 4 of those, 4 more people coming in for interviews to fill those positions. They're either at the EMT or the AEMT level. We're not seeing a lot of paramedics, but any fire chief or any EMS service that I talk to, they don't have paramedics knocking down the doors for jobs. So with that, we'll work with the paramedics that we currently have on staff and ones that are in training. And with our advanced EMTs that we have on staff, and then we currently have 5 in training to be advanced EMTs. We'll be able to provide an ALS service, and hopefully most days there'll be a paramedic on that vehicle. That's our goal. But that's our biggest obstacle right now. As far as other things are going, we're doing well. We've had a meeting with AP Triton the other day to discuss billing and policies and collection policies, QA, QI programs, way to get customer feedback. We're working on all those things. And once the CMS superintendent comes on board, that person's going to be tapped for a lot of these duties. And like I said, I'm pretty excited on the candidate that we've chosen, because I'm quite confident that he's going to take it and run with it.
That's good. Now, so how many paramedics do you have actually signed, sealed, and delivered at this point?
We have 2 on staff right now that are paramedics. We have 2 that are finishing up their class and are going to be testing, which that would bring us to 4. And currently, we just had another gentleman start his class this month in the paramedic program, as well as we've had 5 other members begin their advanced EMT class.
So, and what's your goal in terms of numbers on those positions?
Our goal is to eventually get to have 2 paramedics on each shift, but our goal is also to never be without at least 1 on a shift. But those are goals, and we'll work that way and get there.
So 2 per shift really means having 6 paramedics.
That's correct.
Okay, so you're not real far away from that.
No. Nope. And the gentleman that we're hiring is an EMS superintendent. He's a paramedic as well. So.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Franz. Daniel.
Thanks. It doesn't exactly pertain to this monthly report, but it sounds like, you had this interesting meeting with Triton the other day.
Yeah.
And you talked about collection and billings policies. And so I'm curious, either from you, Lenny, or from John, when the board can be expected to be able to make some decisions about that.
Yeah, we talked about schedule on that, Daniel, and our goal is to come back to the board in February with proposed policies and various alternatives that you could consider.
Can the supervisor be there?
Most likely, yeah. We're hoping he starts, I think, in January, Chief.
Yep.
Great. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Cool. All right. With that, I will open up to the public with questions. Kate?
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I just want to ask, or that you would consider, right now we see the numbers on revenue and invoicing, and I think they're totally out of context because you stopped the clock on the invoicing at the end of June, and then you restarted it in July, but you kept taking FY23 revenue and applying it to that, and that's, you've got somebody else's numbers. So I'm hoping that when we start collecting numbers, the taxpayers can understand how far the delta is, because right now we have, we don't know how many's not being collected because FY23 money is going to FY24 expenditures.
Yep.
And I would love to clarify just one thing. When you're just talking about policies and procedures, and this is sort of a budget question, but I don't want to get up and ask that one again. Are you talking about policies and procedures, or are you talking about including the reimbursement? How much it's going to cost to take a ride in an ambulance? Is that February, or is that going to be now?
That's February. And sorry, just that, but that is, am I correct? That's
Yes.
February. Yeah, because we want to work with the EMS supervisor on it. And I will say, for sure, 100%, I personally support trying to make the numbers as clear and accurate as possible. So definitely. And part of the ARPA set aside an actual expenditure for EMS, and a number of those dollars are for addressing the delta so that we have money coming in for that period of time where we're not getting anything for the billing. So it's important for us to account accurately for how long that is going to take. So I think that's really important for us. Actually, and then I want to go to other people.
Just looking for clarification on what delta you're talking about.
The basically delay from when you bill someone the moment you start an EMS service to when that bill is potentially paid. So there's like a lag time that exists, and it's unique to when you start a program because once the program started, you've got bills coming in from the months past that you billed. Or pay like money coming in from the bills you billed in the past. So it's kind of this early delta that exists. And we saw it when Golden Cross started because they were essentially starting their program here. And so there were a number of months where we were asking them to show us their revenues, and it was like pretty low because there's basically no money coming in. And so that's the delta that we're talking about. And the Brattleboro Fire Department and the town of Brattleboro will experience that exact same delta or difference because we will be starting our EMS service on July 1st.
Yep.
Did I get that right?
You're right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and that was anticipated in the plan that you approved on September 19th.
Yes, I'm familiar with the concept. I didn't know when you say delta, you're implying a difference. And you just explained what it is. Cool.
Yeah, and that's what you were referring to, Kate. Right. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. And like, I'd be curious, and this is maybe more of a budget thing, and it's maybe even a finance software thing, like, what are the ways in which we can kind of show the revenue from ambulance services? Like, it seems to me like it's just going to live on a fairly simple revenue line, but there's going to be a bit of complication behind it all. And so maybe that can be revealed in, monthly or quarterly updates. I wonder, Kate, if your point is also about how in this current memo, right, it's saying billed 338,000, revenue 308. And like to the average person on the street, maybe you'd be like, wow, they collect an astonishingly high percentage of what they bill. And yet I don't think anyone in this room who's involved in this process has any kind of belief that that is like, wow, we collected almost 100% of what we billed. Like we know that in that 308, there's there's revenue from several months ago that's finally kind of landed. So are you asking for a little more clarity in the memo? Okay.
An example is this month, Golden Cross billed out $90,000 something dollars, and they collected $96,000. So it just shows you how. My guess is that he collected more from maybe a couple of months ago or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
That's why what he took in and what he billed out for the month is that way. And I'm sure as we take it over, we're going to see different months as well like that. So.
And
John.
I'll just add that right now, I mean, Golden Cross obviously is a private business, and they've been very kind to share their information with us. Drilling into that more, I think, is, that takes time and effort for Golden Cross as well as us. I think once we turn the lights on July 1st, we'll be able to track all of the billing much better and much more proficiently directly and be able to report on that, Daniel, in whatever way you want to see it. So,
Great. Thank you.
Because we know in advance how meaningful that data is now because of this discussion.
Yep.
Great. I don't see any other hands in Zoom, and I don't see any other hands in the room. So, board, I'll look. Any final questions or comments for Chief Howard or AC Kier? Seeing none, I don't actually think we got a motion. So, I'd take a motion.
To accept
Liz.
the
Oh,
fire
Peter.
department's monthly report as presented.
Peter has made a motion to accept the fire department monthly report as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
You as well.
Same to you. All right, we're going to move on to new business agenda item 9D, which is the Open Gov project update. And I think I'm just going to turn this over to John.
And I am going to very quickly turn it over to Finance Director Kim Frost to update us on where OpenGov is at. She's been serving as the town's project manager on this, as well as several others who are assisting on different components of it, but she will update you all on where we're at.
Kim?
Thanks. So we started the process of converting our data July 1, as after the select board made the decision at the end of June. We started with the financial side, so we started with GL, and actually Dan and DPW started with the asset management. So this is all happening simultaneously. Dan is working on his piece. I'm working on financials and GL, and then we have Jennifer Burnell, who is spearheading the permits and licensing, which is another track. So, and we have the budget book. So we have all these tracks that are kind of happening simultaneously. The biggest one, in my opinion, was the GL, which kind of feeds into everything.
What's GL?
The general ledger.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Which feeds into all of the tracks, because all of the different tracks will all feed into the financials. So permits and licensing, you get a permit online, that money will feed into our financials. So everything is coded by a general ledger number, which we had a number system that was 11 digits back then, and now we have a number system that's 12 digits and completely like a different sequence. So that was a challenge to come up and make sure that the sequences are good, that everybody in the town can handle it, that everybody in the town can understand it. There was lots of back and forth, but we came up with a very good, very succinct general ledger, which is a great thing to have. OpenGov's been wonderful. They have been very, very attentive and assessing our every need even before we know we need it. They came on site for a week. They gave the entire town training on the platform, because this touches every single department. So every single department is now entering their own invoices. We did go live on November 6th, which went really smooth. I give Julia, who is in my department, she handled it like a champ. She was like control center, and she was just like banging out all the things that were happening, that people had questions on, that things weren't going right. But now we just did our second check run, and the questions are less, the reports are getting easier to run, and people are everybody in the town is handling it really well. Like everybody's super open and very happy to be using this software. We're also working on getting the budget book up and running, which will be public facing. We do have a goal for that to happen in December. That's been a little bit more complicated because of back data, so we could, compare year to year, but we are working that through. And I think permits and licensing are looking to have the business licenses up first, which would be at the beginning of the year, so I think by February. And asset management, I think, is looking to go live around April. So, yeah, I think.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Going
Kim, for the presentation. There's no motion to be made this evening, board. It's just an update, but questions or comments for Kim? Very quickly, the budget book is not a physical book of the budget. It's a software, something online that people can access.
That's correct. Yes, it'll be on the website.
And will it be for like the current budget, or will it be for FY25, or both?
So we're hoping that it is for both, so you will have that comparative and maybe even another year or two behind it to be able to compare.
Is the budget book the thing that people will be able to sort of dive in on a granular level of the budget? We're going to talk, next item is about the budget discussion and process this year. And, you know, in the backup material right now, we don't have that like granular, like line by line. Is the budget book the place where people could possibly access that, or will it be somewhere else?
So yeah, you could possibly, yes.
Okay.
Definitely in prior years.
Yep.
And that is the decision that we have to make going forward in being able to roll out the budget book is how do we combine what's new happening here to what it looked like last year, so comparing those lines. But yeah, that is the hope that you'll be able to. But again, next year will be even better because it will be a work in progress, right? Like this is our first year. We didn't go live with anything till November 6th. So we're looking at data that we're giving to them and they're building around. Whereas next year, when the budget book goes live, that will actually be pulling the data from OpenGov. So it will be a very different, not a different look, but behind the scenes will be very different because it will be built right from the data that's input every day instead of us giving them, you know, spreadsheets.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Other questions? Liz?
Hey, Kim.
Hi.
How does OpenGov relate to what John is talking about next? Like, it seems to me from what I've just perused that this is a lot of options and policy options. So it wouldn't relate directly to the budget, but that this might be more on OpenGov, or will be at some point.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was at, yeah.
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 Yeah, what Kim's saying, the way I understand it is, until we're entering all these bills and paying them through the system, we don't have the data built up in necessarily the micro detail that we have in the past. We will get some of that from just giving them spreadsheets of old data, which they'll import, and we'll be able to look at some of that. Part of what we're going to talk about next is redoing things a little bit differently and focusing more on the policy level with the select board, and ultimately having this tool available to anyone who, you know, has any questions about where these rolled up numbers are coming from. So
great.
And we will build, the budget book will build as we have more live data that goes into it. We're
Exactly.
feeding it. It's like a live thing that we're feeding.
Exactly. I mean, so you say granular level, that makes me think of invoices. Right now, you won't be able to click into a line item and, you know, for salt and sand and see the invoices that we paid for salt and sand.
Yeah.
Because it's hard data that they got for the budget book. But moving forward, that will be something that would be an option.
But we can give them our spreadsheets from years past to input so that we have numbers for historic data.
That's correct, and we have done that. And you will be able to then do your comparison, right? Your line-by-line comparison of salt in 2025 to 24 to 23.
And so really, it's going to be better than, the data will be better than it ever has been before because of the software we're using, because it's going to have a lot more inputted to it besides just sort of a spreadsheet that's presented to the public in our budget book for the RTM or whatever.
Exactly, 100%. And because it's going to be building it from live data, like every year, it will just get better off itself instead of us building a spreadsheet on a side somewhere.
Yeah. Once a year.
Once a year.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. Okay. Daniel.
Thanks. Right, and so like in previous years' budgets, you know, we get a document, a very static document, right? Here's some PDFs, and like, you know, this is a total number which is derived from all kinds of bills that got paid or kind of things that got received, which is fine. So this new one will allow us to sort of drill into that, which may be interesting for some people. I think like some of the things that we talked about when we were originally talking about this software was sort of like trend analysis, that kind of thing. Like, have you seen how it can be useful in that regard?
Not yet.
yet.
No, we are still.
Do you imagine how it will be useful? Like,
I can imagine it, and I hope that.
I'm not being flippant. So like, I know that we don't have enough data in there right now to actually do like trend analysis of what we have in there, but like seeing models of how they've used, how that can be done in other budgets that they've worked on, I guess would kind of give us a picture of like what might be possible for us. I don't know, like I'm right at the edge of my own understanding of what that could even mean, but it would be really helpful, I think, in future budget cycles to be able to like make predictions, based on some level of confidence. And
John?
Yeah, and I would just say all these components that Kim was mentioning kind of work together. So for example, the asset management system with all of our assets in it, the condition of all of them, and kind of it will incorporate right into the long-term capital plan. And so if you were considering an alternate for, say, adding $100,000 to street paving, we could go to the system and show you exactly what streets were going to get paved with that funding or not, and it can show you a map. And I mean, it's really powerful in that way of you're talking about. I think it's going to take us a while to get up to speed and learn how to use it, and get the data in there. But ultimately, yeah, it's going to do exactly what I think you're thinking about. So.
Great, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Great. All right, let's open it up to the public. Any questions in the room? I don't see any on Zoom. Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much, Kim. And yeah, we'll look forward to another update at some point in the future as this progresses. So, thank you. All right, board. Do we want to take a break now until we get into the last? Yeah, so why don't we take a 6-minute break and we'll come back at 8 o'clock and we will discuss the next agenda item. We're gonna reconvene the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting. It's 8 p.m. and we're gonna move on to agenda item 9E, which is the draft FY25 general fund budget discussion. So, board, as you are well aware, there was essentially a one-page filler item in the backup material that said that the budget material would be provided to you all today, which it has now. It's on our table here. There are some up at the table here for members of the public to access. It's also on the website. Obviously, the fact that this was only provided to the select board today, in fact, this afternoon, we're not going to really be able to have as much of a substantive conversation about it as maybe we would have if we'd gotten the material earlier. But as Tom Costello always says, when you trip, make it part of the dance. And so I think this is an opportunity for the town manager to sort of walk us through the material in a little bit more detail than maybe he would traditionally when we've had an opportunity to really read the backup material in detail. And I think that's going to be very helpful here because we're going to be talking about the budget and the proposed budget process is going to look different this year than it has in years past. And I think that's a strength for a lot of reasons that John's going to get into. And so I actually won't. I was going to give you a little bit more of a primer, but I don't think I will. I'm just going to hand it right over to John and give him the opportunity to start to speak on it.
Thanks, Ian. Hello, everyone. So this agenda item, the purpose of it is to share an overview and update of the FY25 budget development process, which we're in the middle of currently, as well as a preliminary Town of Brattleboro FY25 general fund base budget and operating budget, and a preliminary FY25 capital fund base budget. As Ian mentioned, there's materials available on the website and also at the table here. And I will be referencing those. And the first thing we're going to do is start with a review of the budget development process, which is on page 3. And if Patrick would turn the slide there is a picture of the process that we are in the middle of. We started out in April with an after-action review of how we did the FY24 budget process, incorporated that into a proposed process that we discussed at the Select Board in August, and you approved that moving forward in September. So basically this list of things that we're doing. In the end of September, the department heads did a public engagement open house at Brooks Memorial Library that was pretty well attended, and they got a lot of feedback, which went into our next time that we spent with the board on October 17th, where we provided the feedback that we heard there, as well as a bunch of spending proposals. And at that meeting, you gave us guidance on ARPA and also coming back with information in this package tonight. So that's where we are now, November 21st, staff presentation on the FY25 base budgets and alternates. I will talk a little bit about moving forward towards the end of the presentation. So if you go to the key budget assumptions on page 4, these are the assumptions that staff made and in building these two base budgets. And so a number of things that the base budget would continue service levels at current staffing capacities, that there are no new programs or staff positions included in the base budgets except for the Emergency Medical Services Program, which was previously approved by the Select Board. Personnel costs were projected consistent with the approved collective bargaining agreements and level funded cost of living adjustments. Services and supplies were projected to increase generally at about 7%, consistent with inflationary trends and known cost increases. All of the discretionary programs and fund transfers were made consistent with RTM guidance, level funded, or as noted in your materials. Then switching to the capital budget, the base capital fund budget includes capital expenditures that were anticipated in the long-term capital plans that were described in the 2022-2023 annual town report. The base budgets do not assume any use of ARPA funding to cover one-time costs at this point. That is certainly an option you can consider later as you continue to look at ARPA. Projected sales tax and rooms and meals tax revenues are projected to increase at 7.5% over FY23 actuals. And one of the big ones, the big new ones, is revenues from fees for services, and that's mostly modest increases, except for we assumed the lowest, most conservative number modeled for the fire EMS billing, because we don't want to get caught short in the billing issues that we were talking about earlier. So next, I'll take a look at the general fund base budget expenditures, which Patrick has up on the screen. And you can turn to the table on page 5 of the memo. And this is what it will take to meet those key budget assumptions that discussed a second ago. And the big picture at the bottom, and I'm not sure it's showing up on the screen for some reason, but
Wow, sorry. Arguably the most important number.
yeah, the most important number, so I will describe it. This base budget would propose to increase by $434,692 from slightly over $22 million in FY24 to $22,473,369 in this base budget, FY25. This is a 2% overall increase across the board in expenditures. We've started reorganizing the budget to ultimately make it easier to follow with 4 major categories, which you can see here. If you're there, personnel expenses, which you can see are FTEs, how many FTEs these budgets support. The staffing costs, which is primarily salaries and overtime and other pay, including seasonal time that's not included in the FTEs. And then also it includes employee benefits, which encompass Social Security, retirement, healthcare, unemployment, and life insurance. With efficiencies incorporated into this FY25 base budget, this draft budget will support 140 FTEs, as is shown, to provide the same services plus the addition of the EMS program. The base budget for FY25 anticipates an 8% increase in compensation, which would constitute 62% of the overall budget. And as you know, the town of Brattleboro is a service organization, so maintaining adequate staffing to deliver expected levels of service is always the largest expense. The projected increase incorporates estimated costs to implement the first year of 4 different 3-year collective bargaining agreements that were negotiated and approved by you earlier this year. And the overall projected increase in personnel expenses incorporates a level funded across the board 4% cost of living adjustment to address the rising cost of living. This would allow the town to meet the requirements of all 4 of the negotiated collective bargaining agreements. An additional cost of living adjustment of 1% is offered for consideration as an alternate below. I'll get to that in a minute. So overall, employee benefits are projected to decrease by $14,234. That is primarily due to an updated and more accurate method of assigning health insurance expenses across the town's 3 operating funds. Next, we'll look at services and supplies. That is the next big section. So personnel expenses, services, and supplies. These non-personnel expenses totaled $5.3 million in the FY24 budget, and they are being projected in this base budget to increase by almost $372,000 for a total of $5.7 million. So the services and supplies part would constitute 25% of our overall budget. This category includes the total of all non-personnel expenses that are modeled in each department's operating budget. And if you look at the attachment at the back of the memo, I think it's separate up at your table, that has that breakdown. It is attachment 1, and it has that breakdown under services and supplies for what each department's component of that is. Some departmental service and supply projections remain flat or enjoying a reduction, including the town manager's office, finance department, assessors, and planning. Small increases in the town clerk's office, library, and recreation and parks. Several other departments, human resources, fire, police, and public works, are being modeled to increase more substantially for a variety of reasons. For example, the fire department needs to incorporate all of the materials and everything for the EMS service, and that makes up 91,000 of the 130 increase there. The rest is for things like adjustments to heating and fuel and electric and all everything that it takes to operate 2 fire stations. What else? Public Works is projected to increase by almost 60,000. That includes the general funds portion of the new asset management system that we were talking about a little bit earlier. It also includes a wide variety of general price increases that are being modeled for gravel, hot mix, tires, tree removal. Everything's going up in cost, retaining walls. Other services and supplies, which is the next line below department expenses, is for everything that's kind of not modeled everywhere else. These costs are expected to decrease by $58,000. This is due primarily to the elimination of the Golden Cross ambulance contract. Solid waste services is the next one. The costs there are related to the collection and disposal of garbage, compost, and recycling. Solid waste expenses are modeled to increase by about 8%. I will just note on the side that the town is in the final year of its contract with Casella, formerly Triple T Trucking. We anticipate need for a number of potential program changes there. We're modeling it at 5% to cover those. That may or may not be a good guess. We just don't know yet. It'll be subject to your decision making on what we do with that contract. Within the risk management subcategory, the town's budget for property and liability insurance and workers' comp is projected to decrease for the second year in a row. And that is because for several years, the town has focused attention on the adoption of workers' compensation best practices, and it's paying off. And we have a very good rating next to the full book of business that our insurance company holds. Liability insurance is also projected to decrease in this category because of the updated methodology in sharing the burden of the coverage. The general fund, which owns only 38% of the value of all insured assets, would support only that percentage of the overall cost of insurance, and the rest would be shifted out to parking and utilities where it should appropriately lie. Per the direction provided by RTM, a total of $440,774 is planned for allocation to the Human Services Committee. That is equivalent to 2% of the total FY24 general fund budget. This is an increase of $159,883, or 57% over last year's set aside of $281,000. Finally, fees for the town attorneys, legal services, and related costs are projected to increase by 4%. That is the services and supplies. So we've done personnel, services and supplies. The next big category in our expenditures is fund transfers out. And this is primarily the capital fund. So this is the line transfer to capital that funds the capital-based budget that I'll talk about in a minute. That is projected to drop 30%, although we're providing you lots of alternates that could pull that back up if you wanted to increase it. This is one way you could pay for those, if you want to do any of those alternates in the capital-based budget. All other fund transfers from the general fund to various accounts are modeled to decrease by $172,000, with a total projected transfer of $70,000 to the Global Warming Solutions Fund, formerly known as the Fossil Free Facilities Fund. The Select Board directed that $70,000 be planned for transfer in future operating budgets, so we're implementing that. There's no other Select Board guidance that we're aware of on standing fund transfers. The Community Safety Fund came out of a discussion at Select Board meetings beginning in 2020. Slightly more than $350,000 sits in that fund today, but there's not yet a clear plan for the use of those funds, and without a clear plan and without additional guidance from the Select Board, staff have not projected any additional funding in the FY25 base budget for that purpose, but this could be added as an alternate if you so wish. Finally, the fourth big category of our expenditures is debt service, and we're not going to be able to, looks like that got cut off for some reason, sorry about that. So I'll just mention that the town's debt service costs are coming down. They are decreasing by $40,700, or down 4%, from $1.1 million in FY24 to $1.059 in the FY25 base budget. And that's the anticipated reduction here is due to the nature of bond financing. We're basically paying down principal and the interest is reduced each year. Debt service would constitute just under 5% of the overall FY25 base budget. Next slide. So before, this is about EMS. So this is, you're on page 12. And so before I get to that, though, I just want to note that the memo provides additional information on the 9 budget efficiencies that we discussed with the board on October 17th. You asked for some more information. We provided that in here. I'm not going to go down each one, but there is some cost and savings described in there. But what I want to touch on right now is how EMS was incorporated into the base budget. So if you turn to page 12, you will see this table that's up on the screen. And so at the September 19th Select Board meeting, staff provided you with the most up-to-date projection of anticipated EMS operating revenues and expenses. These figures have been built into the FY25 general fund base budget And this table is a guide to where they've been incorporated. So, for example, the new staffing, the new 7 staff would come in the attachment 1 would come in at staffing fire. Same with overtime. Things like outside billing, fuel, supplies, maintenance, all those things, bio-waste, oxygen, they have all been incorporated into the department expense line under services and supplies for fire. The capital replacement line at the bottom is 141,723, which was used to calculate the transfer to capital number that I mentioned earlier. The next table shows the revenues that would cover base budget expenses. So we have this, so we're doing a little bit differently, looking at expenses first, then now we'll look at the revenues that we anticipate in our modeling that will come in, and we kind of balance it with property tax. So that's the way we've always done our budgeting, but now we're trying to show it in that order. It's a little more, I think, straightforward. So as noted, rooms and meals and sales tax were calculated at 7.5% over FY23 actuals, and these are the numbers that we get from doing that. That's the typical way that we've calculated them in the past, and it's been conservative. So I think hopefully we'll continue to see that growth. Fees for services, that is the line there. We're going 101% increase there. An increase of $866,000, and that is predominantly the billing revenues that we'll get from the ambulance service. The rest is mostly level funded except for fund balance, which is down due to us finishing the fiscal year closer to the budget in FY23, and also mostly due to the OpenGov acquisition. Yeah. So the big balancer is property taxes, and the proposed 1% property tax increase to fund this base budget would cost each individual taxpayer an additional $17 for the year per $100,000 of property value. The next table here shows the estimated property tax impact in a couple of different ways to help you think about like what is happening here. And so I'm going to focus on the annual tax lines. The third line down is annual tax per 100,000 of grand list value. So the first column, 1,392 was the cost of taxes for this fiscal year and that we're in right now. And it would raise through the base budget by $17 and be at $1,400, 1.2% increase. Also, I will note that that would translate to an annual tax on the grand list median home value, or the bottom line there. The median home value is $183,100. That tax bill in FY24 would be estimated approximately at $2,548. It would be going up if you just implemented this base budget by $31 and would be at $2,580, same 1.2% increase. I looked, staff completed an analysis of property tax increases in Brattleboro over time. Just to look back and see like kind of how we're hitting here, and maybe to give you some guidance, strategic policy level formulation that you may want to take into account later on in December. But this shows that the tax increases over the last 8 years, I believe. The FY20 decrease is believed to have been the result of the first year of sales tax implementation. The average increase over the past 8 years is around 3%, 2.9 or 3%. Okay, then the next thing I want to start to talk about alternates. So that is the base budget, the expenditures, the revenues to cover it. You can do that, and you'll get the continued current level of services. Now, as we talked about on October 17th, there was a bunch of things that the departments were coming to you all and say, hey, look, you should really consider some of these things. They're not weak little silly needs. These are serious things that our staff feel that would be valuable for the select board to consider. So one thing that you indicated at that meeting was that we should come back and look at like what's the impact if we did those things. So that's what we did in this table, which is on page 16 of your memo. Now I'll just put your seatbelts on, because if you were to do all of these alternates, that would increase the budget by $951,000, a little bit over that. That would translate to an additional $94 of estimated annual tax impact on $100,000 of grand list value, or the equivalent of $172 on a tax bill for the grand list median home value. It would take the 1.2% property tax increase in the base budget up to a 6.8% increase, if you wanted to do all these items. And I'm not going to drill down into the details of all these, but they're pretty well explained in the backup materials. I think most of the conversation about these is going to be in December and probably continuing into January. I do want to start to get a sense of, like, as you get a chance to look at this information, are there other things you need to know? Are there other things that would help make a decision about whether you want to include any of these alternates in the final budget that you put forward? So with that, I'll wrap up the presentation on the general fund-based budget and jump to the base budget for the capital fund. Starting on page 21 of the memo, with a table on page 22. So capital fund, remember from our key budget assumptions, would continue the implementation of the long-term capital plans that all the community is all aware of from the annual town report from last year. Page 118 to 120 is all that information there. So there's a link in the memo if people want to check that out. Additional capital requests that were not anticipated last January when we put together that book are included in the section on capital fund alternates, which we'll get to in a minute. So the long-term capital plan lists, they were all reviewed by staff, and most of the previously identified items that were in that annual report are included up here in this list. The William Street intersection improvement project had been on the long-term capital plan. At the time, the staff considered that that should be funded by a grant. We have not been able to access that grant. It is now not addressed here. It is an exception, and it is addressed elsewhere in FY25 as a possible ARPA project. So if you see this table here, we have it split up by first the four previously identified capital projects, 3 delivered by Public Works, and 1 delivered by the Recreation and Parks Department. Several of the Public Works projects have additional funding for consideration in the capital fund alternate section. I just want to point that out. So in particular, street paving and sidewalk repair have an additional ask in the alternates if you want to fund those for more. The base budget would also fund 12 vehicle and equipment replacements, including contributions to both the fire truck and the future ambulance reserve fund. So we're buying the current ambulances with the ARPA the set aside ARPA funds, but we need to start saving for when we need to replace those 6, 7, 8 years out. Next, if you would go to the table on page 24, I will speak to the FY25 capital fund alternates. And this is the table for that. So while the town is unlikely to be able to afford all of these needs, we believed it would be helpful for you to know like what's out there, what's on the horizon, and anything that you don't fund here may have to be addressed anyway somehow if it fails. But they also can be included in the long-term financial plan moving forward. So we would incorporate those. Some of these needs could potentially be addressed using one-time funds such as ARPA or fund balance to avoid increases to the general fund cash transfer. There are also maybe some other funding sources that could go to some of these, and you could plan for grants on some of them. If the board were to include all these alternates that are on this table directly in the cash transfer, however, That would increase the budget, the general fund budget, by $1,225,000. This would translate to an additional $113 of estimated annual tax impact per 100,000 on the grand list, or the equivalent of $206 on the annual tax bill for the grand list median home value. It would take the 1.2% overall property tax increase in the base budget up to an 8.4% increase.
Is that including the 6.8?
No.
On top
Nope,
of that?
that's-
So that would be further addition.
So if you did them both, it would be
A lot.
a lot. It'd be
15%.
15%.
Yep, which is a lot. But you can also see how that breaks down by 100,000 and by median home value. Again, I won't dive into the details of these, but could attempt any clarifying questions at the end of this presentation, or get that info to you in December. So these are the projects. Finally, I will touch on next steps and the questions for tonight. Those are on page 27. Next steps, so at this meeting, staff will begin to gather any additional information that the board would find useful to help establish your vision and set your policy for the FY25 general and capital fund budgets. You'll be asked to make decisions about any alternates to either add into these budgets or apply different funding sources to them. Likely in December, it could probably be in January. Look at the schedule that we have pretty closely. We might even be able to float it a little bit further if you have to. There's plenty of time to figure this all out and to get you additional information if you need it. When the decisions about ARPA are made, then we can finalize, I think, the general fund and capital fund budgets along with the final ARPA list before publishing for town meeting. So these are the questions. Does the select board have any feedback on the key budget assumptions? If you remember those things I started out with, that's what went into building these two budgets, base budgets. Do you have any clarifying questions regarding any of the items in these base budgets? Is there any additional information that would help inform you that we could bring back in December? And finally, are there any questions or adjustments to the budget process that you want to see done differently? And that's what we have.
Great. One moment, Liz.
Patrick, could you leave those questions up there?
Yes, sir. Yes, just a moment.
Yep. So first off, John, thank you so much for the presentation. A lot of work went into, I know that a lot of work went into preparing this, and I really appreciate it. And I am really excited for the way that we're looking at the budget this year. I think that it's a more transparent way for the select board to consider budget alternatives for additional things that the town can take on, and actually understanding the fiscal impact both to the general fund and to the taxpayer. And so I would really encourage the board to be patient as we move through this first time looking at the budget this way, and also understand that you've just received this for the first time tonight. So I don't actually expect you to have like really detailed questions on it yet because you haven't read through it all. I haven't read through it all. So if we want to we might be able to answer some of these questions now. I don't anticipate you being able to answer all of them now. I don't think it's fair to ask you to because you haven't reviewed all of it yet. So I think that we can at least start the discussion for a little bit, hear from the public and see if there are questions there. And just to summarize, basically, because we're using some new terminology, if the analogy is like the base budget is just like the sandwich, which just has the basic things on it, the bread, the meat, the cheese, and then the budget alternatives are all the additions that you could put on the sandwich to create the budget sandwich at the end of the day. So
who came up with that analogy?
Just me right now, which is it's not great. But I think that I think it's important to note that we could really pass the base budget sandwich that just has the basic things on there and not add anything additional to it. So it's easy to kind of forget that when we're looking at all of these alternative things to consider. And with that,
Yeah, and I would just say on these questions, so our hope would be as you go into these and really get to understand it, if you would send us your your questions and your feedback, then we can incorporate that into the December 19th meeting.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, John. And there's no motion because this is just the first bite at the budget. So I'll hand it over to Liz.
Well, Ian, let me just say, I relish the thought.
I missed it.
I relish the thought.
Oh, God.
Let's hope we're not in a pickle, though.
Yeah, really. I really appreciate this kind of turn of events that really empowers the select board to make these decisions and allows the public to understand the decision making. And so I don't have any questions now because it's all thrown at me, but I really would like that. And I look forward to the opportunity for us to ask any questions that we might have, not only of you, but the department heads and so forth. Because, for example, the first time that it was brought up, this library checkout system seemed whatever. But in discussing with the STAR, I understand the benefits of it and so forth. So that type of process will really need to go on for all of these things for us to understand and make decisions out of and weigh the priorities, what we should do now, keeping in mind that we really have, a town, a middle-class town, people who are very conscious of the tax burden.
Absolutely. Thank you, Liz. Daniel.
Great. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, John, for this. And it's a lot to digest, and it's going to take me a little while to digest it. But off the bat, I'm looking at this schedule here, and I see November 29th. Review alternates and ARPA spending proposals with VLCT staff for possible state funding opportunities. Is that a staff thing, or are you suggesting this is select board meeting on the 29th?
No, that is something you guys asked us to do on October 17th, and we're trying to get an appointment to do that, just to see if I'm not sure there are many great opportunities there, but we'll run it down.
Okay.
And the purpose of that is just basically so that we don't pick an alternative that there is actually maybe some state. Liz really requested this. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Amazing stuff. Okay, so moving on to the key budget assumptions. So, base budgets do not assume any use of ARPA funding to cover one-time costs. I'm hoping we can make a wise use of ARPA funding to, maybe hit some of those capital projects or, some other thing. And I know that there's further kind of community input that's needed on ARPA, and it sounds like there's this VLCT meeting that needs to happen. So I know that we're all aware of that. I just want to say it out loud from the board as well. The other assumption I just want to check in about is the revenue from fees for service for EMS. You said here the lowest, most conservative numbers. Can you give a little more specificity to that? So like how much per BLS call, how much per ALS call with that model?
Golden Cross numbers, right? Or is that,
So you would like us to bring back the modeling that we did in
it's been a while
August
since we looked at that stuff, and I want to make sure it lines up with what I was thinking. One of my concerns when we were in that process was that we might be choosing a revenue model that assumes a policy decision that I might not actually support.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt.
Thank you. So that's assumptions. And then I want to kind of point out that, like, my understanding of this base budget is for somebody with a median valued home, they're looking at a $31 per year increase to their current tax bill, which to me seems like a good deal for maintaining the excellent town operations, paying our staff good salaries, good benefits, and all the other things that are in those collective bargaining agreements. So happy with that. And then I wanted to just double check my understanding of the general fund alternates. So for example,
just give us a page number.
Yep, 16.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for that reminder. So on page 16, there's a table of general fund alternates, one of which that I'm pretty excited about is an addition of a social worker based out of the library. And I'm seeing that estimated cost at $100,000 a year. And that's translating to an additional $17.34 for the median home owner's tax bill.
Yes.
So we're talking, if we want to do the base budget plus that, $39 more on your tax bill a year, correct?
31 and 17.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct, yep.
Good, okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood it.
Yep. And
All
so
right.
it would be a 1.79% increase.
Well, hang
Yeah.
on, go back there.
Well, so we were saying
were you adding
$31
Plus the
Yeah.
17.
is the base budget,
Yeah,
right? Plus 1734.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's not 39,
Did, what,
You
is
just
that what I
did the
said?
math wrong.
Oh,
It should be,
it's 48.
thank you.
$48.
That's an interesting little brain fart.
yeah.
If you added the 947, you'd be closer,
Yeah, I don't
but
know
that's
what
the
I
wrong number.
But yes, 31 plus that is what we're talking if you want to do base budget plus library-based social worker.
Correct.
I just want to check my understanding on that.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And I actually, Daniel, I appreciate you kind of walking us through sort of the how we actually look at the budget this way. And that's why I think the term budget alternatives is really good, because essentially you could build, hundreds of budgets based on taking individual individual alternatives, adding them into the base budget, maybe one from capital, one from the base. You could do a bunch of different things. So the purpose of keeping the estimated annual tax impact to the grand list for a median home is so that we can always keep in mind sort of like what the tax impact is for each of these individually. So you can like start stacking them up to kind of get a sense for it.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to keep in mind like what do each of these individual things actually look like for a tax assumption.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess in previous budget cycles, we look at the line by line general fund budget and staff present on it and we say, that's interesting, thank you. And we ask some questions and we occasionally are able to shave, 10, 20 grand off a $21 million budget. Usually it's more common that a little bit gets added in. So I guess the assumption is that the base budget, there's not a whole lot that, the select board's being asked to think about with that. Is saying adopt the base budget.
It's just the base assumptions. I actually would say that if you don't feel comfortable with some of the any of the base assumptions that were used to build the base budget, then you should speak up about it. And if you don't, then I think you are kind of passively agreeing that those are things that are assumed and reasonable to build the base budget, which is essentially continuing services as they are.
Yes, I understand. And I think it's going to need a couple of weeks maybe to get to even to the point where we can say, yeah, base budget, you're good. I mean, like maybe we're not going to do that old process that we used to do, but I'm going to need to take a look at this.
I would just say that if you want to reduce services, it would be very helpful if you told us where you want to reduce the services,
Right.
and we'll come up with how to do that. That's the role of your professional staff.
Okay. Thank you. Can I just make sure?
John.
I will just add that with 68% of our budget in personnel services,
Yeah.
any reduction of services is going to be a reduction in staffing.
Yeah. And so the next time we will talk about this topic is when?
December 19th.
Okay. And we'll be considering budget alternates and ARPA spending proposals at that time.
Yes.
Yes, John.
So I didn't really dwell on this, but it is in that table on the budget development process. The ARPA process is kind of going parallel to this. So if you remember, we did a first survey and got a bunch of, kind of was like a brainstorm. We got a lot of ideas. Patrick and Sue have now sort of tailored that down based on your guidance at October 17th meeting. And we are sending that out as a second survey to get people's feelings about what are the most important things there. We will bring back that guidance to you on December 19th. The survey will close on December 13th so that we have time to pull that together.
All right, is it a follow-up question or Franz has got a
I
question?
just got to finish it.
Okay.
It's like one more thing.
Well, I want to
So-
address what John just said.
Well, let Daniel
Okay.
finish his question.
So on December 19th, we'll consider alternates, and then on January 16th, we'll finalize. So 1, 2, 3 meetings. And this first meeting, I just got this.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think this is the schedule that we approved. I understand back a month plus ago. Obviously, this meeting not having this backup material yet, it does impact the schedule. We have some built-in flex time in January, and so I think we very reasonably could put another meeting or even 2 meetings in January. And I'm happy to talk with the budget or the agenda setting committee to think about incorporating another meeting, especially after the 19th. Sort of see. One of the things is we've never done it this way before, so I don't really know how much time it's going to take, and it could take a lot of time, and that's fine.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Of course, Franz.
Well, on that same topic, those of us who were present at the agenda-setting meeting for this meeting did at least mention the possibility of talking budget on December 5th as well. I don't remember exactly what else we had lined up. John seems to think it was a lot. So maybe that's not a good idea, but I'm sort of echoing what Daniel's saying about it's going to take a little time, and I don't know, it feels like waiting 4 weeks to talk about it again is a long time to me.
Any other? I think for me, I actually have a question, John. And it's on a base assumption. It's basically on the capital fund budget transfer.
Okay.
And why it's such a large decrease. I can't understand, I don't really understand how that works. So if you can just elaborate on it for me.
Well, so there's a long-term capital projects plan and a
Yes.
long-term capital equipment replacement plan, which are both in the back of that annual report. What popped up on that for this current fiscal year was just a lot more significant than what staff had projected out for this upcoming year. Normally, the process is to kind of do some of that thought process, and instead of bringing them all to you, the select board as alternates, the town manager would choose some of those and incorporate them in, and the capital budget would be about the same probably as the year before. It would be about 0 instead of reducing 30%, and let you guys figure that out. So that's kind of what Liz was referring to. This gives a little more control and policy decision-making in the hands of the select board as opposed to the town staff.
That makes sense. Great. Thank you very much. Franz, hand?
Yeah, but I don't know, did you see this one? Okay. Couple of things. One is that the debt service is going down a little bit. I suspect in subsequent years it's going to go back up, especially with the generational improvements project. I think it would be helpful just to have some peek into the future on that. Not directly relevant to this budget, but somehow it seems important to me to just have an eye on the horizon. Echoing what was just said about the base budget, theoretically, we could be looking at, well, what do we not need to do anymore, or where can we find efficiencies and things like that. That's a lot harder to identify, I think, but from a theoretical standpoint, at least, I think part of our responsibility is to make sure that we're doing things in the best possible way in the current budget, not just sort of endlessly repeating ourselves into the future. So, if anything like that occurs to us or seems like it would be a reasonable approach, I'll be thinking about that. Realistically, as I say, I think that's more difficult to come up with, but it's just, it'd be nice to think that at some point expenses can also go down or become consolidated or have something that's not just always in the up direction. And finally, I've said as we were developing this budget process that I really didn't quite understand how it was going to work. And I wasn't exactly skeptical, but I was just unknowing of, well, what's this going to be like? It's not going to be the same thing that I'm used to from years on the Finance Committee, et cetera. And now that I see it actually in front of me, it's a little bit early to judge, but I think it's possible that this is totally awesome. And I'm really impressed with this and how intuitive it is. That to me is the really good part about it. Is like I get it, and up until now I didn't get it. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to working with this model and seeing where we emerge.
Thank you, Chris.
Can I just ask a question? The next survey for ARPA goes out what date? November?
I don't think we have a date yet. They will be due December 13th. We're trying to get them out this week or next.
Due November, I guess.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Daniel?
Ian, I'm just looking at the select board goals, and one of them was making the transportation center a good place for parking, and another one is developing the concept of safety zones. Are those goals, which could be seen as being represented by, say, security guard at the transportation center? Is that security guard at the transportation center in this budget somewhere?
Yes, that is factored in here. And we were planning to come back and address at actually December 5th progress that's been made on these goals if we are able to pull that together, given everything else that's going on.
One of the things, Daniel, I see in future budgets is more integration in the budget alternatives and select board goals. So like that sort of select board goal setting that happens in May, and then the budget alternatives developed over the year, and then seeing how alternatives are actually accomplishing goals that select board set, and then a policy decision to be made about which ones to prioritize and how certain alternatives are accomplishing goals and how maybe others need more consideration or something like that. We're not quite there, but that's okay. I think like that's a future, maybe a future budget. So, absent additional questions or comments from the board, we'll turn it over to the public. Franz, can you drop the? I think there might be hands on the Zoom. Oh, sorry, Patrick. I apologize.
I go by Franz sometimes.
It's a compliment.
Absolutely.
So any
office hours too?
A dozen times over the course of your
9 to
discussion.
5 every day.
What's that?
There's been a hand raised about a dozen times.
Yeah, and they can put it back up when they're ready. And is there any questions in the room? Yep.
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I just have 2 questions. In the past, we've gotten a detailed department by department budget as opposed to this summary, and I'm wondering when we're going to get that. As taxpayers, I want to know what the details are, and I think town meeting reps are going to want to know that too. Second of all, there's no mention of the pool, and I'm wondering if there's going to be any bonds or anything asked by town meeting for any FY25 expenses.
We've got some issues on Zoom here for a second.
Okay. Oh dear.
Been hacked.
I was not going to notice it until you mentioned it.
Wow.
Sorry, Kate, we're gonna.
Yeah, Dick, we get it. Well, that's clever. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna have the issue the whole time though.
Nope, we are done. I can't figure out who's doing that.
Yeah.
All right, now.
Wow. It's aggressive.
We haven't had this issue in a while.
It's being very flexible.
All right, I think I got him.
You must be excited about like the budget, the new budget process.
Yes, and you need to
Totally
turn
what it
off
is.
everyone's ability to share screen.
I'm sorry?
You need to turn off everyone's ability to share screen too. That's the issue.
Yes.
Yes. Can you repeat your second question, Ashley? Thank you.
First question was, when are we going to get a detailed
I understood
budget?
that one.
Second one is, what's going on with the pool, and will there be any request for a bond or anything for the FY25 budget?
Okay. I don't know if you want to respond to either of those.
Sure. So this is the level of detail that we were proposing to share with the select board. All the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty is kind of not at the policy level. We were hoping you would make decisions at the policy level, not at the level that you hire all of us to manage these budgets for. If you want to see a reduction in services, we can give you an idea of what that would look like. The pool does not have anything in the alternates, and there's no bond proposal on the pool in this base budget. It is, I believe it's listed as one of the potentially ARPA-funded projects as something that people would like to see, and we'll get feedback on how much they'd like to see that from the survey. So.
Daniel?
I can't help having questions, man.
Of course.
I take Kate's point. We're in this process right now where, like, we've been doing, public meetings about the pool and whatnot. What's the timeline for getting some, like, hard information out of that could have a budget impact?
We really don't have a timeline yet. That's being developed now. I mean, the designs are being discussed with the community. We don't even know what it looks like.
Right.
The earliest it would be FY26.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think the question on the other one, on the detailed breakdown, I'm going to leave it up to the select board whether we want to get to that level. I think one of the reasons why I was talking about the budget book so much was I'm here, like, if as a taxpayer you'll want to get to that level of detailed, granular, I think you should have that opportunity to, and there's a tool that we've invested a bunch of money in to make sure that you can. It's more of a question for the board as to just what is an efficient use of our time, and not only efficient, but what are we trying to accomplish in the budget discussion? And so I think the hope in this way of looking at the budget, that we're really looking at policy direction and decision making that is transparent, made by the select board, not baked into the budget ahead of time and then justified, but actually made by the board, and that the tax impact is understood ahead of time. And so the granular detail analysis, if the rest of the board wants to do that, I will take that direction and we can work it into the budget discussion. I'm hoping that we can stay at a policy level as well, and then make sure that the tools are available for residents in the community who want to do that level of detail, to do it, and to ask as many questions as they want of town staff, who we pay professional town staff to build those line items. And so if we can't have that tool available during this budget cycle, then I think that maybe we will have to reconsider that question. But it sounds like it will be available in December before RTM, which I think is really the most important moment of consideration for the budget, because we are proposing a budget to RTM. But that's just my thoughts. I'm not speaking for the select board there. Liz.
And I agree with what you just said, Ian, because it seems like what this budget has done is aggregated, like each department has the required salaries and then the required, but we've pulled all that together to say, these are the salaries, these are the expenses, this is the base budget. And so that is not necessarily a given, but it's the base that we can make our first decisions on. But all of the extras that each department would come tell us about, those are the policy decisions that have been called out. And I love it.
Daniel.
You guys feel free to jump in. So I guess, what's been different about this year's process is on September 28th, we had a budget open house at the library. I went to it. I talked to the staff. And I think what's missing for regular select board watchers is, the department is sort of telling the story of their budget for this year, right? And sometimes it's like, yep, and sand went up 3%, and that's what sand costs now. And sometimes there's a little more of a narrative and an opportunity for a back and forth. So I wonder if there's a middle ground, right? Like we did the open house. We're not going to do an exhaust. I don't think that's the middle ground because that's high level and it doesn't really tell me a story. Let me try and articulate what I'm asking for. You know, if each department was able to give a narrative about their budget in a memo that's like, I don't know, a couple of paragraphs long, and it's in our next memo on this topic, maybe that would help sort of bridge the old process and this new process. I guess I'm feeling like I'm very interested in these policy discussions about alternates, right? That's really important, and we do need to get to that. And as somebody that's been part of this older process, I'm like, oh, where's my big fat line by line thing? And I know it's there because that's what this is derived from, right? So yeah, I'm sort of missing that a little bit, but I also want to be really straightforward about the fact that every time we've had a budget process while I've been on this board, we've had somebody sitting there. We usually had a few different department heads a night, right? And they come and they sit there and they talk to us for 20 minutes and we question them for about 20 minutes and nothing changes. Nothing much changes.
Because they are often presenting on the base budget.
Yes.
Which is making some pretty base assumptions that I think we all kind of agree on.
And I trust our town staff and our town manager's office to provide the town with a reasonable, efficient, cost-effective base budget. I don't know, it just feels like, I'm trying to kind of support Kate a little bit in what she's asking, and I'm trying to find some middle ground there.
Well, I think it's easy enough to say, Public Works budget increased by blah, blah, blah,
And what's the story of the increase? Is it all just staff increases?
Is it sand? Because obviously all the salaries have increased by the amount in our bargaining.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past, we've gotten each department head to say, well, the budgets went up 3% because the salaries went up 3%.
So I want to make one point, though, which is that that's true, kind of, but also there were some, and I'm not, this is not criticism of the old way, because I did select board budgets for 3 years doing the other system. In the other way, there were budget assumptions made and baked into that budget.
Yeah.
Right?
I much prefer this.
Yeah, so like it was not all just the base budget stuff, because there would be discussions about things that were put into the budget presented to the select board that were, kind of already put in, where this proposed system would allow the select board and the public to see really what the impacts of each of those individual potential alternatives would mean to the taxpayer, and also what it would mean to services or infrastructure. So
I think that the information that people are looking for is in this memo about what the salary increases are and what the expenses increase are. And I look at this budget as like the grown-up select board budget. And I'm happy with it. But, if people need more after, right now, we haven't even read this. Nobody's read this. So let's everybody take a deep breath, read it, and then tell us what else they may need.
yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, Liz. Yeah, and we can see if there is some sort of middle ground. Because essentially, if I understand what Danielle's asking for, is you want something accounting for the $434,692, which is the difference from the FY24 approved budget and FY25 base budget as approved, or as presented.
Yeah,
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I think Liz makes a really important point. They're like, we haven't read this.
Yeah.
If I'd read this, maybe this actually tells me the story that I'm looking for. but I only just got it, so I haven't read it, and for example, so in finance, there's a $20,000 reduction in staffing expenses this year. In the past, Kim would have sat there and said, well, we got a $20,000 reduction in staffing expenses because, I don't know, somebody retired and somebody else who's on the team is cheaper than the old person.
And that
a
was
good guess?
discussed in the EMS
Yeah,
discussion at length, but
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that is addressed in this memo. There's a whole section on 9 efficiencies that the staff brought forward to save time and effort. It's, this is really, this whole process, the budget process, whether you're talking about last year or this year, it's about developing this bottom line number that you're going to take to representative town meeting. That's the number that we manage to. We don't manage to a department budget. We don't. That's just not part of what RTM guides us on. So we manage to the bottom line. I appreciate the ability to have flexibility within that. What Kate was referring to is just all the information that we typically use to model out what that increase is going to look like. I would hope that you would trust the department heads, that they know what they're doing. They know where the price of sand is going to some extent. They know where, how many paper clips we need in rec and parks and everything else. I mean, I trust them. I think they're good managers and that they're doing a very efficient job for you. One of the things when we did this after-action review that we heard both from the Selectboard and from the Finance Committee was, why did we meet every week, and it didn't do anything, and it didn't make any difference? And so this was a way to kind of turn this on the head. I know it's different, I know it's changed, but it's trying to put the policy decisions in your laps, make those policy decisions, and we'll have a final budget number down at the bottom, 22,473, or whatever it is that we take to town meeting to get approval.
Liz, and then I see Dick's hand.
so while John was presenting, I just kind of make a quick little study, and he said like 62% of the budget is personnel, and then 25% is services. So, you could go through this, which we haven't done yet, and figure out where the increases come from, and that should go a long way to answer the questions that people have. So then I just say, let's everybody live with this for a while and see if they still really have those same questions.
And we can always modify, that's totally
Bill,
true.
do whatever you want.
Can we hear from Dick first, or do you?
Very quick.
Yeah.
Daniel, I wonder if those brochures that were put together for the meeting at the library, which I believe are online in the website, looking at those might give you some of the narrative you're looking for.
No doubt, and they would give me it, and I think what's missing, I think what's different, right, is that, in the past, the weeks and weeks of budget meetings didn't actually result in any meaningful change to the bottom line, true, but what they did give the public was a pretty good feeling of transparency and an opportunity to ask questions of department heads. And I think that's what feels a little missing here. And I know that the open house was an attempt at doing a different way of that. And I know that those brochures were an attempt at that. But when it doesn't happen in a public meeting like this, it feels a little different. I didn't read every one of those brochures.
Peter's had his hand up for a while, and then I do want to hear from him.
Yep. I'm just, I'll just remind this board again that doing budgets and financial stuff is not my bailiwick, right? It's not anything that I'm overly interested in. I work hard to understand what we're doing and why we're passing it. And even though as everybody else sitting at this table has not had the chance to review in great detail the information that we have, I feel like this process is giving me a fighting chance to really understanding this a lot faster, because just with John's explanation alone, some simple notes have really kind of attached me to this budget process. So I know that there's a lot of questions on a lot of old ways that we did things that might satisfy certain things. I know we keep using the cost of sand as an example, and that's just a fixed price that we're just not going to be able to negotiate and change. So maybe it's not the best example, but it is the easiest one for us to understand. But I think that this process is really is going to give me a quicker understanding of getting to the number where we need to be. So I'm liking it.
Liz?
I think we're going to have opportunity, correct me if I'm wrong, to interrogate department heads when we're talking about these alternative elements. And that's really the guts of it, because everything else is pretty much a solid state. So that's the important analysis that we need to question and decide ourselves.
John?
I agree with that, Liz, and it would be really helpful to know from the board which particular departments that you have the most interest in, and so that we can be efficient about that and
would have to look at the alternatives to do that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So that's, not a question for tonight.
Not for tonight.
No. Okay, Dick, thank you for patiently having your hand up. Dick DeGray.
Did you say Dick?
Dick, can you hear us?
Yeah, you got me now? Thank you. Interesting conversation. I have several questions. One, Daniel asked John if the security position in the transportation center was in the budget. I didn't see it anywhere as you were going through the narratives. And my first question is, why wouldn't the security guard be in the parking budget and instead of in the general fund budget, unless it's in the police department's line item? And if you can answer that, then I'll ask my next question.
The answer was it is in the budget currently. We're going to hear on that a report on the security guard, I think at the next select board meeting. And I think it's in the police department's budget. Is that correct?
We have security here at this building, at the library, and at the transportation center. I'm not sure how that's getting split out, but I assume that it is getting split out by fund. And I also believe it's being charged to the police department budget. So.
Yeah. But we can have a breakdown of that for the discussion on the 5th, or on the, is that on the
19th?
No, we're going to have a presentation on the, on the status of the security guard contract. And
as Liz kind of touched upon it, with all the staffing requests, one would hope that you are going to talk to every department head and ask for the justification of why they need that personnel. I certainly did hear Liz's explanation when she talked to Star about the position that she was asking for, and somewhat of her tone had changed after talking to Star. It would be great if all of us got to hear the conversations from the department heads on their justification. And so I do hope that happens. And lastly, I'm really concerned, the base budget, it sounds great, 1.2%, and you get kind of excited. And, you say, well, maybe I don't think we even need to cut that. That's only 1.2%. And then you go to the staff request and then the capital plan, and I think it jumped up to 14% if everything got approved. I would hope that ARPA money would be used specifically for capital projects if you're going to adopt any. Using ARPA money for residual costs in the budget is not a good idea, in my opinion. We get away from the cost from the first year, but then it's going to come back and really hit you in the budgeting process the following year. So I'd rather get something tangible in the capital plan than use ARPA money for staffing. And I would hope that when John when you talked about the pool briefly is that you're just not looking at that capital or that ARPA money strictly for the pool, because I think there needs to be a really broad discussion about the upgrades of the pool and its cost and how much the pool will be used, and if it's worth the expense, if the pool's only going to be open for 2 or 3 months a year, which it is right now. And so to go out and spend $4 or $5 million, I don't think I can support that, and I'm a big supporter of the rec department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dick. Yeah, and I think just a couple quick things on Dick's points. I think my understanding, at least, of this budget process is that having all of these options is not, there isn't sort of like an assumption from town staff that we're going to adopt all of them. Right. And so, in fact, the fact that there are so many that adopting all of them would basically be fiscally irresponsible is the fact that we need to make priorities, and a discussion needs to occur about which of any of these we want to prioritize and actually put into the budget. And then I think we can see, I think to Dick's other point about talking to department heads, I'd like to sort of see how the discussion develops with the board, and if we feel like, I think really the question is, are we going to feel like we can knock some of these out and not consider them at all without talking to department heads? And I don't really know the answer to that, because we haven't all looked through it all yet. We haven't read all of the backup material. There may be some where we don't really feel like it is a good, it's a good consideration for this year, and we don't really need to pull a department head up and hear a justification. We may not. We may want to hear from the department heads on every single one of them before we can determine whether we want to knock one off the list. So,
and it's also an opportunity for the department heads to make their case, which they may wish to do.
Yeah. So So I think it's we can see, and I would hope that maybe for efficiency, there are some that we're able to sort of just make that determination. But we'll make sure that we have the time for the board to fully consider all of them. Daniel had his hand up.
I just wanted to clarify. So we will consider these alternates on the 19th.
Yes.
Right? And so on the 19th, we'll have a discussion about like, hey, I'm super excited about this one and this one, and I don't feel like we can afford anything else, right? Even if it was moderately interesting. There's 13 proposals here, and these are for the general fund, right? And then there were capital fund alternates as well. So if we were to discuss that on the 19th and then need a little more from, how many department heads do we have?
I think, to just get to your point, I'm hearing you that we're probably going to need at least one more meeting into this, partially due to the fact that we didn't get this material until tonight.
Yeah.
I think if that's the point, I think.
Well, I'm walking myself through like how we end up with some priorities around these. And so rather than calling every department head to that meeting, right, maybe we can have a discussion, whittle it down to say a couple at most, and then those department heads could come and have a cage match or something, and we decide which one or two we want. I don't know.
John.
2 minutes.
So one thing that I don't think we've lost any time on this meeting at all, because I think that we weren't planning to have department heads here for this conversation anyways. So they wouldn't have been available to answer any detailed questions. Our thought was to do that on December 19th.
Okay.
It would be highly helpful for the board members to tell us which of these alternates you are interested in hearing more about between now and the 19th. If you do that, I can efficiently put together that sort of a conversation and make sure that you have the information that you need to consider the ones that you're interested in.
Great. And it might be like all of them based on,
Fine.
Yeah. And that,
But
and that's kind of what I mean by I don't really know.
5 different people.
Yeah, 5 different people. It's the first time, so we'll see.
And I might look for 3 head nods and run that by the agenda committee too. So
okay.
If I hear 3 on a certain project, like, let's move forward with that. Let's talk about it.
On the 19th.
Yeah, if there's only one or none on some of these, do we really need to talk about them further?
Right, so I would really like the library to come and speak to their proposals.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to see removal of any item like occur at the 19th. If You know what I mean? Like, if we're not going to consider something, I think that's got to happen in the select board meeting, because we haven't really made any consideration on them.
Okay, but I won't bring the resources to address it.
I guess if it's not, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense.
Okay.
So you're saying all department heads that represent an item on this alternates list should attend the 19th?
No, well, go ahead. Tell me what you said.
I was understanding that if there are items on either of these alternate lists that I'm hearing from 3 or more select board members, I really am interested in this library things, library. I'll make sure Star is ready and available to give you further information. It would also be helpful to know, like, what further information is going to help you decide yes or no. I mean, that would be also useful. I mean, I think, again, it's trying to cut down on this meeting after meeting after meeting where we kind of spin our wheels a bit and don't get anywhere. It's like, it is asking you to step up and make some difficult decisions. I do want to get you all the information that you need, Daniel, but I want to be efficient about it too.
But the converse is also true, that if there's people among us that tell you they don't support, if nobody supports them, then you wouldn't have people there on the 19th.
Yeah, I would.
But I think that Ian was saying that that lack of support for certain items needs to be publicly discussed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we will be transparent about which ones we're not going to address, and then if there's second thoughts or other, we could potentially tackle those in January.
Yeah.
Too. So just a thought.
Bronze has 2 points.
Yeah, one is just, let's let it play out. I
Yeah.
think we've discussed it plenty. We've got a good way to move forward, so let's move forward and we'll modify it as needed. The other thing is that I just noticed that on page 17 and 18, it looks like the staff social worker information and library social worker information are identical. I don't know if that was intentional, but in the staff social worker position, it talks about it just being at the library. So I wonder if there was some text that got duplicated or something. They may need a revision. I don't know.
Saved us some money there.
Actually, no, it's, so.
It's an identical request.
It is just a typo that it says for Brooks Memorial Library. The one under Human Resources was the idea, I think we talked about it on October 17th. That is for a more broader social worker response for staff. So I don't know how.
But other stuff is the same as well in that paragraph.
The cost is the same, the general.
No, but you free up library staff to return to their traditional library work activities. So anyway, take a look.
It's
at
an
it.
error.
Okay.
It is slightly different. It's the same type of position, sitting in a different place, doing a different function.
Right.
But I will explain that in the follow-up materials. So thank you.
Okay, and any other, no motion tonight. Thank you again very much, and I don't see other hands. Thank you very much, John, for giving the longer presentation. So we will we'll get more information and we will discuss this again on the 19th. Any other final questions or comments on that one, board? No? Okay, in that case, I think I just got one more motion, huh? Liz?
I move to adjourn.
Liz is going to make a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, John. Patrick, thank you very much. BCTV, thank you very much. And thank you so much to our interpreters. Bam.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Right on time.
Yeah, 5 minutes early.